That's the good stuff.
Welcome back, everybody, to Goodwill Podcasting with Connor, Dan, and Stone. Your movie podcast that today is talking about the Academy Awards. With it right around the corner in March, we decided to not talk about this upcoming award season, but the ones previous of the 2020s, and specifically the Best Picture winners from this decade so far. And that'll be Parasite from 2020, as many people I think have heard of that film, Nomadland, Coda, Everything Everywhere, and then Oppenheimer. And we're not doing it alone. 5 movies. We always kind of like to have a guest. That is a hefty thing for the 3 of us to talk about. And luckily today, again, for the first time, we have a new guest, and that is Physics, Chris. And it's incredible to have you here. I always say that because it's so early in the morning and we always record this. So we haven't had too many people ditch, I don't think. So I always appreciate all of our guests. But hey, thanks for being with us. And I'm excited to talk about these movies today. I think I was telling Dan, these might be maybe the best movie, depending on your taste, the best movies we talked about in theory, because they've won the best award. So I'm excited to get into it, but appreciate you being here, man.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Yes, it's early in the morning. Got my coffee. Super Bowl Sunday, can't go wrong there. So, it's a good day to squabble up and, show people that, they're not like us. So let's go.
Nice. I have a question for you guys, and I'm curious if this will happen or not. I guess it fits with the award season and the Super Bowl. Is there a possible chance that Timothy Chalamet pops up on the halftime show?
People are talking about that because they put him in the promotional stuff.
That would be. I don't understand how he's like able to do all this stuff, but if that happens, because I saw this guy's video that went viral. Basically, there's a Bob Dylan song and a Kendrick song that sample the same song. I think it maybe what was Not Like Us.
Yes, the Ray Charles sample.
Okay.
Which is the Night Like Us is a jazz interpolation of the Ray Charles song. And then of course Bob Dylan also covered it. So there's a possibility. It can go anywhere. I mean, he also has a song with Taylor Swift, so we are all over the place. But it feels like Timothy Chalamet is doing his best to make sure he wins that Oscar no matter what. It feels like Coleman Domingo's the only person in his way, and I would give it a Coleman Domingo, but it feels like it's Timmy Tim's to lose at this point.
Yeah, I saw Adrian Brody just won at the Critics' Choice Awards. I really hope he doesn't win, man. I really hope he doesn't win. Personally, I think my pick was Daniel Craig, who isn't even nominated, but out of everyone that's left, I think it should be Coleman in terms of just straight up performance. But it feels like they're pushed. Timmy's just getting like so much push, right? Like, and just so much media power behind him. Which, I mean, I like him, but is it the best performance of the year? No, I don't think so. But
Yeah, that Saturday Night Live thing kind of pushed him towards where we are now.
It kind of feels like Josh Allen, getting nominated so many times for an MVP that they're finally like, here you go, man.
Yeah, I mean, NFL awards are such a joke. Like, Damar Hamlin literally died on a football field, and Joe Burrow missed 7 games, and he's a comeback player of the year. Damar Hamlin died, and then is a starting safety. Yeah, but you still could give it to him. Like, he now this year is like a starter the entire year and played well. Like,
yeah,
he should have won it last year too. But I digress. It's fine.
But also, Burrow arguably should have been MVP. I think it should have been Saquon, but Burrow had a far better season than any other quarterback.
Yeah, but Stone, is your pick Coleman? Who's there?
The people we have, definitely, definitely. I would. Yeah, definitely. I like Clarence Macklin's performance better than Coleman Domingo's, and he's not even nominated, which is wild. My takeaway from the movie was him. Obviously, Coleman was really good. Coleman like popped out of nowhere, really, and I feel like he's just like kind of taking over Hollywood, which is really incredible. I think for a man his age, it's really different. I know he did a lot of Broadway, I believe, or stage acting. I think Euphoria is where he kind of got into like the TV movie industry, and now he's kind of taken off. But I remember seeing him in The Color Purple, which I feel bad that like nobody went and saw that movie, which I didn't read the book, or I haven't even watched the Steven Spielberg film. So that whole new story was new to me, and he plays like a villain basically in it. And seeing that performance, and then also seeing him in Sing Sing, like this guy's got so much range. And then just hearing him talk and actually how he is as a person, it's just like he's kind of one of a kind. So I'm really like on the Coleman Domingo bandwagon. I know he's in Running Man. He's gonna be in Running Man with Edgar Wright, and that's what's his name from Twisters and Glenn Powell.
Glenn Powell.
And then also he just got cast, I believe, in Steven Spielberg's UFO movie, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yes. Yeah.
good for him, man. Like I'm really happy for him.
He
Is that
just had that
UFO
show
movie
too,
supposed
the Madness on Netflix, and like I don't really watch Netflix shows, but it was like a pretty solid show, like a little kind of thriller. I
Yeah,
was
it was good in
also
that.
I was just talking about how I think they could change Magneto's backstory to be from apartheid, and if they were going to bring in Denzel, I think Coleman Domingo would make a great Professor X in that scenario. Like, there's a few. I think Jeffrey Wright would be interesting, but I, I don't. I mean, I think that would be cool. But I hope he wins. Um, we've talked about it a lot. I feel like A24 dropped the ball really badly with how they handled that movie in general. I think we all loved it, so it's a shame.
Yeah, I think I have like this running thing of like really good movies that come out. Usually it's not A24 that kind of drops the ball. Usually Neon. Because it always feels like with Neon A24, they have to pick one. They can't have multiple ones, and I think that's where Sing Sing hit. I remember when there were a film called Clemency came out, but Alfred Woodard that which was really good, got a lot of buzz, but then it just came out in January and nobody saw it. It was the same thing with Neon and Origin. They had Anatomy of a Fall.
Mhm.
So Origin came out in January, just kind of went by the wayside, even though it had a huge buzz, but came out in January. And I mean, I got to see Sing Sing early because of the Alamo Draft House, but outside of that, nobody could see it. Now people have had a better chance of seeing that movie, but it's this weird thing. And unfortunately, each movie I named had a black lead in it. And it's just this weird feeling of like, we got to pick one. And I think with Clemency, it was Parasite, which is understandable. That was the one that we're going to pick. It was the one that actually won that we're going to talk about later. But, I feel like there's room for more than one movie that can get all of the budget behind it for, Oscar talk.
I also said I thought it was fucking weird because when you look at the like you can look at like Gold Derby and look at the odds for the like best picture nominees, it was like Sing Sing and Nickel Boys at like 10, 11, 9 every time. And it's like it feels like they said, okay, well, we have Nickel Boys here, so Sing Sing is not going to be here. And that's fucking stupid because Sing Sing is just straight up a top 3 movie of the year. And it's like you were able to celebrate that Nickel Boys is there because it was a very like in terms of the filmmaking itself, it's like kind of a revolutionary movie, but it's also a great story that people don't know that school even existed. And that thing was there for like 100 years, like doing what they did. And I think it just feels weird because it's just like, why is it one or the other? Like, I don't know. And there's other movies that are up for best. I mean, Amelia Perez is there. Like, it's what are we doing? So I don't know. I understand what you're saying. I haven't seen Clemency, but I'd like to watch that.
So let's also like just talk about Nickel Boys because I hadn't seen it until after the nominations came out. I don't really know how that movie wasn't nominated for cinematography. It's like fucking ridiculous. I
Bro,
don't know. It
cinematography
should have
noms are
won.
just whatever. They don't. It's just whatever. I don't know.
Or even best directing. Like the movie hinges on the cinematography and the directing, and it's just like,
Yeah.
Crazy. But like maybe directing into our movies that we're talking about today, and
Yeah.
maybe if I think probably still the front runner might be The Brutalist, so we can this might apply to that film as well. But I don't know if you guys saw my review for Nomadland on Letterboxd, but something came to mind to me when I was watching these and thinking about these five movies, excluding Oppenheimer. A little bit different with Oppenheimer, it doesn't apply here, but the other four movies do right in a row. Why do you think Hollywood, I know every single movie isn't like this, but all four of these movies are. Why do you think they love like lifting up films about the lower class. I think it's really interesting that Parasite, Coda, Everything Everywhere, and also Nomadland all deal with that. And it's interesting that people from Hollywood, not everyone from Hollywood has come from Hollywood. Like I think the Daniels, there's a lot of their own personal history. Um, I forgot the last name of one of them specifically in Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I think like Chloe Zhao, she's like the daughter of an executive producer in Hollywood, so she didn't really grow up like around Nomadland. Like that's not her area of expertise in a sense. So I don't know. What do you guys think of why these stories are highlighted like at the top prize, basically, when it comes to cinema in general?
Chris, you want to start?
I kind of feel like it might be just a fallout. Not sure about Parasite, but I feel like the other ones a fallout from the housing crisis and just feels like just a shielding of everything. And I mean, they want a feel good story as well. That's, especially with Coda, everywhere, everything all at once. Nomadland. And there's, I mean, one thing I would say ties everything is the American dream, which
Very
I mean
true.
can kind of fall where the brutalist is. I would say all five. There's the American dream. There's this through line of that, and especially where we are right now in America, it feels like we're still trying to grasp on what that is. And a lot of it is also community with nomad land, the community between everybody that's there and Coda, the fishing town, of course, everywhere, everything all at once, the family, their community, and everybody that's around the laundry shop. So feels like the American dream community um seems to always be the thing, and the thing that lifts whatever is the thing that lifts everybody up at the end of it. So there's this feel good feel outside of Oppenheimer, because it feels like Oppenheimer was getting us ready for where we are now, is of having somebody create this monstrosity that he could no longer control. And it feels like we have our monstrosity now, and we're about to see what that explosion is. But yeah.
I think the other thing with these movies is like with each of those four, each of them also kind of provides a look into either a community or an experience that like people just don't know about. I think to me, we talked about this when we talked about a real pain and everything. Like, I think a lot of times the power of a movie is being able to create empathy and to put you into someone else's shoes and help you understand like their experience as much as you can through entertainment or art. But I think each of those movies does a pretty good job at that. And I think each of them is a pretty good representation of the community they're dealing with. And I think different people have had different issues with kind of each of these movies, which will be interesting to talk about. But yeah, I do agree with you, and I think I don't know if it's the Academy trying to paint itself in a way like you know hello fellow struggling people, like, but it's they are mostly impactful stories, so you can't really argue with it. I don't know that all of these were deserving of Best Picture, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, Connor.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, obviously, 99% of the people of the Academy are out of touch with reality. But I think a lot of these movies might touch on like the everyday people watching it can actually connect, and so maybe something inside the Academy's mind has seen how well these have resonated with general audiences. So that's why they'll vote for them and be like, we can connect with you too. But yeah,
Like I said, it's just like an observation I saw, and or I that came to me as I was watching these. But then also I think it's because maybe people in the higher class, middle class, don't necessarily have interesting stories to tell, and that's the point of a movie, is to have something captivating that can, like you said, Dan. I think it's also it's just really interesting to get like transported into this world of these people that you didn't know about, and you no longer have, can connect with the characters, but you also learn about the characters and learn how they operate and how they function. It's just a lot more interesting than I think the other end of the spectrum, which I think is either biopics or movies about Hollywood. I guess I would much rather take these than those.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
also feel like there's this through line of capitalism and wealth that's like going through the first four movies. I feel like Oppenheimer is the biopic, so it's kind of out on itself. But wealth is the parasite, and Parasite is the thing that affects everybody there. Um, just the class inequality from Nomadland, Coda, everything everywhere all at once. I mean, the beginning of that movie is because of taxes, and that's our shoot off for the rest of the movie is taxes, and just how just that big hand of capitalism that is just hovering over us at any given second that can stop us from finding our voice or make us want to be isolated because of um the life-changing events that it puts on us, or it makes us um act differently when we're around wealth, and we want to be a part of wealth and the evil that that brings out, which is still part of capitalism. um and I feel like with those four movies, there's a little bit of touching in all of it, and how anybody that's why we connect with these movies, because we all have this want and feel to live a better life, which still hems to the American dream. But it's kind of hard when you're living paycheck to paycheck and you see people actually being successful and having a good life, or people that are bad and having a good life, and you don't understand why I'm going through this and I'm not getting these chances to better myself, or because of the lot in life that I'm in, I can't move forward because we don't have the money to move forward. But then we watch everybody else move forward in front of us, and that, social anxiety kind of just hovers over everybody.
You guys find it strange watching movies that critique like a capitalistic system when they're pushed through the studio system in Hollywood? Like I've always find that funny when I see these movies with these messages, and I'm like, that's great, but like, how was this movie made and distributed? And like, it always, I don't know. I think it's always interesting to think about, because at the same time, I would not prefer that that type of messaging isn't present, but there's hypocrisy there oftentimes, and I think it's funny when you look at different stories and kind of see the hypocrisy behind them, or the people that make them. I don't know. Does that kind of leave you guys with a bad taste ever, or just you just kind of look past that?
100%. And there's one movie in particular that I'm excited, not excited, but I think that we're going to talk about today that really fits that well for me. But yeah, definitely.
I try and forget about it, but it is like the overlooming shadow. It's the same way as when I watch a movie like Lost in Translation, and how, there's how many creepy dudes in Hollywood going after girls 40 years younger than them.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know. I think it's hard to ignore context sometimes, but um, the best picture nominees in 2019 is, I think we should talk about the nominees each year just to chat
Yeah.
about them. It was Ford versus Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Do you guys all agree with Parasite as the best picture winner, or would you have had another preference?
The only one on that list I haven't seen is 1917, but
And
I would say,
those,
yeah, I think Parasite deserves it. I think my second favorite off that list you just read off is probably Marriage Story.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, Parasite for me for that one. I think that year my favorite movie was a movie that because that was what 2019 going to 2020. So I think mine was the um yeah, The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Like I said, a movie that A24 that nobody was really pushing for. But no, it was Parasite. As far as like in my number two for that one was The Irishman. Really enjoyed that film. I'm a
Why did people
huge
not like that movie? A lot of people strongly dislike it, and I do not understand really
I
what.
feel like it's the weird thing about how long it is. I feel like people kind of already rolled their eyes before they got there. Even though, I mean, there was a time period where just saw like a TikTok where somebody was going over a best pictures where like during the year the searchers and everything, and each movie ran about almost 3 hours. Like that was just the average. I just feel like people would this the short attention span life that we live in, and they just didn't want to give it a chance. Which is crazy because I was like one of my favorite Mario movies is Casino, and that movie is also very long. It came in 2 VHS cassettes. You couldn't watch it on one due to how long the movie was. But no, my best one is for 2020 is Parasite.
I was gonna say I was at a wedding last night, and I ended up talking to the guy next to me at our table. I'd never met him before, but he was saying how The Dark Knight's his favorite movie of all time, and he doesn't like Oppenheimer because of how long it is. And he said they could have just cut everything after the bomb went off, and he's like, it would have been a better
The
movie.
most important part of the movie.
Yeah, I was like, in
Nice.
my opinion, what's the best part of the movie? Not to
Get
jump
that guy
ahead
in
of it,
Hollywood.
but
Get that guy making movies.
He'll just work for Warner Brothers. That's all.
Yeah.
yeah, but
Why was Joker nominated? Does anybody know? I don't know. I don't remember.
it was super polarizing when it first came out.
Everybody was talking about it. Everybody at that moment loved it.
I mean, didn't it make $1 billion at the box office?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
It has three big things going for it, in my opinion, which is obviously Joaquin's performance, which either if you like it, if you don't like it, everyone kind of agrees on that. Cinematography is very good in it as well. And then also, I believe it won for its score. Its score is very good.
Like 2019, we also had like Us, The Lighthouse, Uncut Gems, even a movie like Peanut Butter Falcon. Like I would prefer
Peanut Butter Falcon
over
is so underappreciated.
like Just Mercy. Ad Astra is a movie I like more than a lot of people.
I think I have it at a 4.
Hell, I would prefer Knives Out getting a nomination over a joke. I don't get it. But I think Little Women is also sensational. I think it's Greta Gerwig's best movie. I guess it's Parasite here, but Little Women is like dangerously close. And The Irishman as well. I think it's a 5-star movie. I think The Irishman was like a beautiful wrap up of. It was like saying goodbye to like Pacino and Pesci and De Niro and Scorsese. Like it was saying goodbye kind of to all of them together in this genre. Like I don't understand, especially if you're a fan of the genre. How do you not appreciate that? I don't know.
So I
you
can't
know
remember-
another movie where people were saying goodbye to that I thought was really good. It was in my top 10 of 2019, and that's my number 7, which was Toy Story 4.
A
Really?
good movie.
Yeah.
All the Toy Story movies are like I think they're all top 10 Pixar movies. But
and I have to say the concept for the fifth one kind of sounds interesting. Like about kids being too into like their iPads, iPhones, stuff like that, and not necessarily playing with toys anymore. That's a good idea. But I was like, man, we really need a fifth one. And I was like, you know what? That could really work.
They haven't
Now,
steered us wrong yet.
Maybe
yeah,
I need
I
to
don't know
revisit.
how Woody's gonna like join up with a gang again because they kind of separated at the end of the last one, but they'll do something.
I think that's great because I think that's one of the things that's making America dumb as bricks, honestly. And I think it's only going to get worse. So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, we're literally not touching grass.
Yeah, we're touching anything, like not like doing things with your hands and moving around and being outside and talk like that. Kids need to grow up, I think, in that kind of space, and it's so bad for your brain to be developing and just absorbing the internet all the
Oh,
time.
dude, for our baby shower last year, obviously before our daughter was born, someone got us like a little holster for an iPad they put on like the back of your car seat, and my wife and I just threw it away.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a parent. I can imagine it's difficult understanding like the balance of it and when to do this and when to do that. But like, I just think you got to be careful because you see like such young kids just glued to a screen in public. It's just like that's like just for your brain chemistry. That's so bad.
I was
But
gonna say, my wife and I talk about it pretty frequently, having kids. And like I loved playing tic-tac-toe on the back of a menu growing up or something.
you're gonna say I love playing TikTok for my kid. Shuts up.
A lot of people do.
No, but
was
like
Yeah.
speaking of
tic-tac-toe, like
parenting,
just coloring at restaurants and shit, like
Yeah.
that was entertainment. You don't need,
Yeah.
you know, dancing
but
fruit.
yeah, speaking of parenting, Ultimate Dad movie, Ford versus Ferrari. Like, dads love that movie, but it's a good movie. It's
I
great.
like
I like it.
yeah.
Talking about Parasite, do you guys remember? Because I remember when the Oscars happened this year, as in when Parasite won, people weren't expecting it. Like there was something else that people thought was going to win, and then when like Bong Joon Ho won directed, everyone's like, "Oh shit! Like this could really happen." Do you remember what the front runner was? I'm trying to look at these movies, and I don't remember what might have won
Off
over
the top of my head, I feel like Once Upon a Time, maybe.
Well, you got to look. I guess that's not a bad guess. I guess we have to look at the other categories. I think
Has
Joker won.
Tarantino won a Best Picture?
He won his first one. I think it was with Django. I want to say.
I don't think Django won Best
I
Picture.
don't think it did.
No, I don't think Tarantino's ever.
Or
I don't
no,
think he's ever won. No, he has won director, but I don't think he's ever won Best Picture.
no, yeah, I'm thinking his. No one ever won an Oscar from his movies until *Inglourious Bastards* with Christoph Waltz, and then he also won with Django.
There
So
you go.
that's what I
So
was
the
thinking.
betting favorite was 1917 at -167. Parasite was second at +225.
Okay.
Then a large space to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Then Joker, Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Marriage Story, Little Women at +15,000. That's an embarrassment. And then Ford versus Ferrari at +25,000.
Do you think *Little Women's your favorite of that year? Like nominations?
These movies, it's Parasite and Little Women and The Irishman, and then everything else for me. I
Okay.
think like yeah. This is very good. Parasite is like a movie I think is perfect. It's not necessarily one of my favorite movies of all time. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think those three movies were the best, but 1917 was the favorite.
That's crazy. I feel like everyone forgot about 1917, so it's really insane that it
Really,
was
I
the
It
feel
was
like a
favorite.
very
lot of
Oscar
people still
baity.
talk about
Which
1917.
what'd you say?
I said I feel like a lot of people still talk about 1917 and how good it was.
Yeah, it's solid. It was fun in the theater.
Yeah, I feel like that was. I feel like there's always one movie where the older generation they gravitate towards, and that was 1917. I think I was the youngest person in the movie theater when I went to go see it. The same way when I went to go see Conclave, I think I was the youngest person in the movie theater for that movie. They just kind of, those movies kind of grab people. And of course, I mean, everybody talked about the running scene in 1917. So like it anytime a movie has like a particular scene that's shot a certain way, it's always kind of gets its way to the Oscars.
Pretty
Yeah.
much. And then I know that like the Academy, like the voting body, actually has changed drastically, and there's a lot more people that are a part of it, members that are like from different countries, international, which is why I think when Parasite won, it kind of started. I was just thinking about it. Basically, three out of five of these movies, if I'm thinking correctly, yeah, have a lot of subtitles in it. Obviously, one is completely in a different language, but then you have Coda and then Everything Everywhere at Once. There's a lot of different languages there, and I thought that was really impressive. And obviously, with Amelia Perez getting all the nominations, like this is going to become a usual, I think, possibly like a foreign film getting this many nominations. So it'd be really interesting to see what it's going to be next year. I think that's why people were thinking that Amelia Perez was nominated so much because it was the foreign film that had the popularity. Which I sent this to Dan, which is funny because I know Dan's favorite movie of last year was The Count of Monte Cristo, and at the French Film Awards, right? Which that's why The Count of Monte Cristo wasn't nominated. It was because the elected movie from the country was Amelia Perez, so it didn't even have a chance. It won more awards than Amelia Perez in France. So people in France like that movie a lot better than this one or Amelia Perez, but that's a tragedy. But but you guys want to talk about Parasite a little more? I feel like we haven't even touched on it yet, but
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What was
uh,
everybody's thought like the first time of like walking out the theater of seeing Parasite. I saw it at Fantastic Fest, which is a film festival in Austin, Texas, ran by people that run the Alamo Draft House. I think it was not North America premiere, because I think it premiered at Toronto like a few weeks before, and then it came and the director wasn't in attendance, and I remember seeing it and I was like, this is an amazing movie, and I hope that people get a chance to see it, because I just wasn't thinking that this you know foreign movie was going to get so much love when it came out, and I'm glad it did, and I was surprised when it won, because I think I did think it was going to be 1917.
Yeah, I think my first time watching it, I didn't see this in the theater. I actually watched this, I want to say like 3 years ago for the first time, um, and then just rewatched it. And I think it's really impactful. I mean, I think Parasite is. I mean, it's very darkly funny to me. I enjoy the comedy of it. I think Bong Joon-ho is like very in touch with like dark humor, and I think when I'm looking at Mickey 17, it seems like that's going to be one of the main facets of that movie. So I'm excited for that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think Parasite is beautiful because it has a lot to say, but like the allegory isn't like, none of it's really hidden, and like it's all there and it's easy to digest, and I think like anybody can sit down and watch it, hopefully, and understand like what is being said, and um I think it's a movie that, especially right now, you know is very, very relevant because um I think you can make the argument that like the everyday people in the two political parties in America are the family in the basement and the other family, and I think like a certain point you got to stop fighting each other, and understand um, who's actually responsible. But I think people get so caught up in the desperation of their individual struggle that it's impossible to look around, right? Because all you're doing is staring at what's right in front of you. So um, I think it's great. I like that it's kind of relatively straightforward. And I think it's everything really works, and uncovering kind of the whole mystery the first time is really fun, I think. So
I was gonna say, I think I watched this for the first time in 22, and I think I'm with Dan. Where like, I think it's close to a perfect movie. It's just not one of my favorites, but I appreciate it a lot for what it is. And also, I jump super easy, or I scare really easily. This movie is creepy. The first time you see them like behind the bookcase and like just peering over the stairs, haunting. And
yeah,
I had no idea like what this movie was about at all going into it. So like at that point, I was like, "Is this gonna be like a horror movie? Is this a ghost? Is this a demon?" And, like I was going through every different cycle, and then it was just some guy.
It's just like I think Bong Joon-ho's movies are so accessible to people who haven't watched foreign films, because he just has, like you said, Dan, he has so much dark humor. They're very entertaining films. And what I remember about Parasite, I believe I watched it in theaters. I have a bad memory, so that's impressive physics that you can just like recall like where you watched it. I mean, I guess that's the impact of the movie, you know. But the pacing in this movie is insanely incredible. It's just it's so quick. It's so engaging, just like you said, uncovering this mystery. And I feel like going into this the first time, you don't expect the people downstairs, like you don't expect the housekeeper to come back. And all of a sudden, that's such a huge part of this film that like you weren't, like I've said it before, like you weren't expecting at the very beginning. So I think that just ropes you back in, keeps you more engaged. Um, but like, yeah, Bong Joon Ho, the only movies I've watched by him, which he hasn't come out with that many films, but I watched Okja and Snowpiercer, so I still haven't seen Memories of Murder, which I heard is like maybe his best movie, even better than Parasite. So I'm excited to watch that. And then I just saw that Vets Movies, Joel, friend of ours, just watched The Host for the first time. I know The Host is also really, I've heard is very good as well.
It's really good.
Yeah, so yeah, I really like Bong Joon Ho a lot. He is a very unique filmmaker, and like you said, Dan, there's not really a lot of hidden. It's very straightforward. This movie is, and that's kind of what I think The Rock represents at the beginning, because I think even the sister says it's metaphorical, like right out of the gate, and he's basically saying like, you guys know what this movie is gonna be. Like I don't have to like sugarcoat it for you at all, or like hide it. So, but yeah, the horror, there is like a little horror elements too. I think everyone got creeped out by, I think it's when the kid like sees a ghost and you just see the guy's eyes just like pop out of little stairs. um really big eyes, really well casting there. But to me, watching this the second time, and I know if you guys feel this too, because obviously I feel like all of us maybe aren't, you know, obviously when it comes to films, and maybe all these films, we like siding with the lower class and the upper class. For me, it was interesting to see like this family isn't a good family. Like what they're doing isn't great. And I thought was interesting is obviously the Parks aren't necessarily horrible people, which I thought was very interesting. The only thing that they really do that you'd be like, come on, is like the smell thing, right? They keep on saying that these everyone that's working for them, right? Because they're all family, they all smell the same, they all have this like smell to them. I think they refer to the subway. It smells like people who get on the subway and ride the subway. Besides that,
I would say talking like that probably makes you a pretty shitty person, but
yes, but I think
not
that
someone I'd want to spend any time around.
right, but I think there would have been like in a traditional story, there would be even more. Like I think going into this, you would expect that the husband is like cheating on his wife. I don't know why, but I feel like that's something that you're thinking in the back of your mind that he's not a good person, and like these people not being good people. I think that's a normal story trope for rich families, is that they really don't care about their family, but they seem like they really care about their kids as well, which is why they're hiring all these people. Like they're a tight knit family. I'm not saying that one thing that they do obviously isn't a shitty thing, but I like that Bong Joon Ho does it. It's like more realistic. He doesn't take it to the extreme. Like he gives you just that little bit that shows you, okay, they might care about themselves, but they still don't associate with these people at all. You know what I'm saying? I feel like if he went overboard even more, it wouldn't have been as effective.
Well, I mean, the thing is, that's a little bit weird about this movie, but I understand. I mean, what he was doing. Like when you listen to Bong Joon Ho talk about it, like he describes the Kim family as parasites. Like, but the point is, like the parasitical relationship is a two-way street. Like the each family is a parasite of the other because um you know the Kims become basically wholly reliant on just completely working their way into the Park's home and their life and every aspect of it, and they're leeching off it. But really, the Parks without the Kims, what would they have? And like, no, I think the higher class and the people that own things in this country, etc. Like, if you don't have the worker, if you don't have the people to do the things that you don't want to do, what do you actually have? You have nothing. Um, but I think it's a symbiotic relationship. But he's undoubtedly also painting um the Kims in a negative light. I mean, so it was an interesting choice, like you said. But how do you feel about that, Chris?
I feel like it's a movie of there's nobody's a good person. Everybody has their faults. Everybody is kind of horrible. I think one of the things I truly like about this movie is the touching on the indigenous people, the Native Americans here,
Mhm.
with the son that is, always in indigenous people motifs, the TP, the feather hat, the toys that he has. And then also smell. I mean, there was this, huge uproar on Twitter about this woman that got her PhD on the importance of smell when it comes to storytelling. And this movie is one of those films where, they, as even being around the parks and being able to be around wealth, they couldn't get the stench off of them actually still being poor. No matter how many lies they told and how far they infiltrated into the Parks family, they were always going to have that smell on them and show them that, unfortunately. You're not like us. But with the indigenous people motif, the one thing that you see is like you could see it as, the Kims being, the Spaniards, the English coming into America about to, invade. Um, but this kid has all of these toys, and to them, it's just a toy. There's no context, there's no story of what they are. And as Bong Joon-ho said, it's like the context and the meaning behind the actual things only exist as a surface level thing. The Native Americans, to them, is only a surface level thing. It's basically cowboys and Indians. There's no real depth to what we're seeing here. And I feel like, as far as all the movies we watch, I feel like this is the more timely movie at this time period, because right now the context and meaning of things is all surface level at this moment. Um, we don't try to delve any deeper, and the same thing with the Parks and the Kim with their relationships. Neither one tries to delve any deeper between them. Um, to a point, they have a connection, but at the end of the day, like Dan said, there is a parasitic relationship between them, and once one is done with the other one, they have no other use for them.
Yeah. And I think it also shows like really nicely, and especially in America, this is true. Like so much of the American system is who do you know? That's
Mhm.
it. And I think like regardless of the why am I forgetting? Can't think of the word. Regardless of the industry, um, or when it is, it's just like, do you have a connection? Do you have a way to get a foot in the door? And I think oftentimes we look at whether it be a company or a political party, and you say, how is this person here? This person is a moron. This person has no qualifications. This person is XYZ. Then you look into it, and it's easy to find out why that person is there. And it's um, who do you know here? It's nepotism, it's connections, and that's very much what our country is built on, and that's a great way to keep people out, right? Of anything, whether it be education, whether it be jobs, that can open doors or lead to opportunities. Um, and I think the number one thing you one of my favorite moment in this movie maybe is literally near the start of the film. Um, and it's the Kim father is sitting in their little basement flat, and there's a bug on him, and he looks at it with such disdain, and he goes to flick it. And I think like when you have nothing, when you are struggling, all you want is something else that you're better than, right? And again, this is the playbook that's being run right now in our country. Give people something else to say, well, at least I can hate that. I can control that. This is the cause of my problems. And then literally right after that, immediately after, the fumigation comes in. But guess what? The fumigation isn't just killing the bugs. The fumigation is making them sick, and it's affecting them as well. So he might be able to, display violence towards that bug in that scene, but when the fumigation comes, they're getting fumigated too. It's the same thing. And I think just that little scene is so effective because that's literally what plays out better. That plays out later in the film because when the Kim family gets a little taste of like wealth and success, and like they're like, "Oh, we're doing all right now." They look at the couple in the basement like they're vermin, right? Like you're just here messing up, my bag, my opportunity. I'm not going to allow that to happen. But despite the fact that you are me, we are the same, but you're here standing in my way now. I'm better than you because you're in the basement and I'm on the second floor. And the Parks might be able to go up to that third floor, right? Because like Bong Joon-ho's talked a lot about stairs and the importance of like just levels in this movie. Like this house is kind of up on a hill, and they literally live in a basement. Like it's again, it's not like rocket science, but it's very purposeful. But I think you see the way people will turn on essentially their brothers and sisters when they get a little taste, just like a morsel dropped from someone who has an immeasurable amount of wealth and prosperity. So um I think the main message of the movie is like don't eat each other, like attack the system. Like if they work together, they could have done so much more. And who knows how this could have ended, but the desperation just breeds like so much contempt for just people that are like you. So
It's the crabs in the barrel mentality. He's pulling up the ladder behind you to make sure nobody else can go
gatekeeping.
up it.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at the names, Kim and Park. Those are the most common, Korean names.
Yeah.
So they are the common people. They're like anybody around them. But the thing is, wealth is just chipping away at their humanity, their empathy, their morality, and just their family in general. And this is how we get to such an explosive ending because they've lost all of it by the time we get to the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like they come to the realization that like, at the end of the day, the Parks still think they smell. And regardless of what, how they might be nice to their face or this and that, like they will never be them. Um, and there's that distinct line. And I think that, you see that drives them to violence. I mean, the violence in the movie is um it's not frequent, but when it hits, it's very impactful, I think. It's a great story. It's really, really well written. And Bong Joon-ho also has talked about like he kind of based this off his own experience. Like he was, I think, when he was in his 20s, he was a tutor for some really, really rich family. And I think anytime you're able to see a director, writer pull in their personal experience, it tends to be something really cool, especially when it's something that, like I said, we haven't maybe seen before. So definitely appreciate his personal touch here.
So I want to ask you guys about a very pivotal scene. I remember it possibly being my favorite scene when I first watched this movie, just because of how much you find out about, especially one character, Kim, the dad, is when after their house is flooded and they are like in that sanctuary, like everyone is evacuated to that sanctuary and they're sleeping in that
Yeah.
sanctuary. And his son, Ki Woo, asks him, like, hey, what was that plan that you had? And he's like, the best plan in the world is to never have a plan because then your plan basically never fails. And how the movie plays out, there's a very interesting sequence where I don't necessarily know if it happens or if it'll actually happen or when it will happen. But basically, Kiwoo says that he is going to make a plan, right? And he's going to work hard, become wealthy. That way he can buy this home and rescue his father. Now, I guess in the timeline of the story, he's just thinking ahead and you see that. I don't know if that actually happened. No. Okay. Because I don't know if it's that basically because the father has always had this mindset of, hey, you know, I don't know for how long, but he's just never had a plan, right? And they're in this poverty situation. So is it possible that it's kind of his fault, somewhat, that they are in this predicament because that is his outlook on life? Because I think this movie is kind of critical on his outlook because look what happened to his daughter at the very end. Like there should have been a plan all along. He just didn't have one as the leader of this family in the context of the story.
Yeah, I think that's definitely accurate, but I think it also leads to the point of like it's very hard to look around or it's very hard to make a plan when you're drowning. Like it's very hard to make a plan when you're like physics said like living paycheck to paycheck like and I think again you see that in elections around the world when people are going through economic hardship, they will not vote based on empathy. They will not vote based on the plight of anyone else. They're going to vote based on perceived benefit to themselves, and they're going to look about an inch in front of their face, and they're not going to care about anything else. And I think that's what you see happening here. It's just what's next, what's next, what's next. There's blinders on because there's a carrot just dangling in front of their face until the carrot's gone, and I think it shows like the dangers of that, but also like how do you get away from that? Like it's the problem is the system. Like there's no hope at the end of this movie. That's really just an illusion. I think it's a dark ending, but that's what the movie has to say. So
I also think the not having a plan, but It's weird. It's one of those things where it's like, yes, you're in this place, but the fact that they figured out a way to infiltrate into this family by having these elaborate plans to systematically bring one in, bring another family member in, and constantly keep doing it till they basically invaded. Because this film does touch on colonialism and imperialism, using the Kims coming in to, this wealthy land of the Parks. Um, but it shows is like, if they really tried, they could get someone out of it, even though this is their lot of life. But it's just going to be so much harder. And the thing is, it might not work, which is why he says, the best plan is to not have one. Because if it fails, then if you don't have a plan, if there's no dealing with failure, failure's not there. You didn't have anything to deal with. But it also shows like, if they put their minds to it, they can actually do something. They got into the house, they were able to have this success, but then once they got there, they didn't know what else to do. They only worked hard enough to get to where they are, and then it was like, well, we're here now. What's next? And they didn't have a clue. And now they're in a place they have no idea how to navigate, until it crescendos in the end.
Yeah, and I think maybe a small thing too is the fact that I guess how poverty can happen based on the age or the basically the parents here are the ones that get the jobs last, right? It's the kids who are the ones that start this plan. So I think it's really interesting how maybe even so when it comes to this, like as life continues on, hopefully the thought is that my kids, for everyone, right? My kids will be more successful than me, their kids will be more successful than them. So I think that also you see that here, the fact that the children have an opportunity to better their life in a devious way rather than the parents, because that's just how life works.
And I think when he was writing this, it was at a time when like unemployment in Korea was really, really bad, especially for younger folks. I think there was like a kind of a unemployment among young people was a huge problem. So I think like them being kind of the foot in the door here makes sense in regards to
Mm.
kind of what he was trying to say. But it's interesting. It's like what physics was saying. Like it with what they do, it does kind of show their ingenuity and like their ability to work hard, but only in a situation where they think it's going to be easy money, right? And they can just kind of like you wonder like if they and like I feel shitty saying this, but like if they applied themselves
That's what I was
in their
saying.
lives, like
Mhm.
and maybe that's another message, like don't rely on the easy way out or that ultimately that is not sustainable, right? That's like don't rely on band-aid solutions like to make change. Like you said, it's a very hard road to get to that, but like you have to strive for something that will provide consistency and actual change, and then just looking for a band-aid and then a band-aid and then a band-aid, eventually there's no more band-aids, or the wound is just too big to be covered. It's just like that doesn't help. So it was definitely you know a gutsy movie that had a lot to say. And it's like you said, Stone, earlier, it's not really spoon feeding like kind of how this movie would typically play out, because there's no heroes at all. They just don't exist. So
Makes the movie a
um,
lot more interesting.
yeah, I agree. I think we should keep rolling because we have four more movies. But do you guys have any closing thoughts here?
I'm curious. You said this was a perfect movie, but not one of your favorites. So perfect being 5 out of 5 for you, Dan?
Yeah.
It's a 5 out of 5 for me as well.
Same.
Yeah, I also have this at a 5, and I need to revisit it though because this was the one I didn't revisit for the episode.
It's good.
Nice.
It's good on rewatch.
I don't think that's true for all of these.
I actually have, unfortunately agree with that. You guys want to get into Nomadland?
Oh,
Yeah.
What'd you rate it, Chris?
Oh, it was 5 out of 5 for me as well.
Okay. I missed it.
So, do you guys know the origins? I didn't do a ton of research on this film, but I did do some how this movie came to be. I don't know if you looked that up when you after you watched this movie, Dan. I know you like to look up stuff, but if I the idea that Frances McDormand had,
No.
if I'm not mistaken, Frances McDormand had a statement where she basically said, um, like she had this epiphany where she said, "Hey, when I get to a certain age, I want to live in a van. I want someone to call me Fern, and this is how I want to live my life." And then she read the book that this movie is based off of, Nomadland, and this idea popped in her head to bring her like thought of her future to life, and pitched it to Chloe Zhao, and her and Chloe Zhao basically concocted this movie out of that, which is super interesting. Um, like you said, obviously for all of us, which is probably a good thing. This is a look into another life that we are unaware of. That I think everyone in the back of their minds kind of know that people live like this out there, but it's interesting to actually see it, on the big screen. And the fact that everyone in this movie, basically, besides I think his name is Dave, Frances McDormand's interest, and then also her, everyone are everyone that's friends with her is actually nomads, and that their stories that they're saying of why they got into this is real. Like I believe, that guy's son died, that woman had cancer, stuff like that. So it gives you a really interesting look into this, but then everything about Fern is made up, which is interesting in itself. And I saw your review, Dan, and I think you summarized it really well what this movie is about. It's just about a woman trying to escape loss and trying to kind of run away with it and not necessarily deal with the problems. And I think Frances McDormand, as you said in your review, is one. I looked it up. 7 people, I think, have won 3 or more Oscars, and she is one, and rightfully so. She's really incredible in this. Even though I don't know, what do you guys think about? Because living like this isn't glamorous, and I think that this movie kind of sugarcoats it a little bit. It doesn't necessarily show you the hardships of living life like this, and that people a lot of times have to do this out of necessity rather than want. So, and like you said, physics, and I mean, we all know, like, the Oscars love feel good movies. So I think it does somewhat feel like a documentary, but not as extreme as it could have gone. And I just don't know how I feel about that.
I really
I mean, I
like
don't.
the documentary style feel to it. And I do think they show some of the hardships with her, like, sleeping in her van when it's freezing cold outside. Obviously, they could have dove into it more, but
Yeah, I don't. I think out of all of the movies, I mean, like I said, outside of Oppenheimer, I was like, this is another one. I don't think it's feel good. I was like, this movie is hard. Like, her hometown, the factory goes down when we know a bunch of places in America where, you know, it's all surrounded by one thing, and once this one thing leaves, everybody's just up for grabs, and what their next step is, they have no idea. And hers was to, travel across, and it's lonely, it's isolating. She then finds community, but it's like it's hard. Like you said, finding where to use the bathroom at, and the cold, and this vast land of just nothingness around you. Yes, it's beautiful, but you're by yourself in just this feel of isolation, until she meets, her community. It's the community part is the feel good, that she finds people that are like her, that also have gone through very traumatic things, and they're bonding over it, and they're learning how to cope together so they can move forward and build a community, so that no one else is kind of left behind with how hard this van life is. um but like you said, it's out of necessity. This is not people wanting to do this. It's because something traumatic happened and it led us here. And I was like, this is one of the movies where it's like I would not want to be put in this position. Like it felt like it sucked, and nothing anybody would want to have to do, but it's something you have to do out of necessity, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think sometimes I try not to do this because it makes me angry at times, but I read a lot of letterbox reviews of this. There were some interesting takes. I think to understand, like Frances McDormand, first of all, was an orphan. Frances McDormand was adopted, and she was adopted by a nurse and like a traveling preacher, and she grew up moving around the country. She didn't have anything, and she has described her biological mother as white trash. Um, so like Frances McDormand didn't come from anything, and she came from an experience of being a kid who went through it and moved around the country because her adopted father was a preacher. So I think I don't really have a problem with her making this. It's not like she grew up in a fucking mansion. Like I don't know. I think, and throughout her career, I think she's, you know, been comfortable playing. I think she seems like a relatively down to earth person. I think she plays a lot of kind of everyman characters. I think she's one of the best actors of her generation. Um, and I think everything about this feels genuine. And I think the connection that you see um, it feels very genuine. This could have been really bad. This could have been very, I think, tone deaf and kind of gross. Um, but I don't know. I think when you look at her life, it's not too jarring that she made this. I also read people talking about how this is pro Amazon. What movie did you watch? Like, I think first, like the entire point of the movie, first of all, is that a gypsum plant shut down, and it shows the reliance of small communities in like rural places or more desolate places, how reliant they are on the system, like we just talked about. And when that goes away, and I think I live in Pennsylvania. There's so many like mining towns and stuff like that where the same thing happened, or factory towns where the factory goes, the town is screwed, right? People are just at the mercy of that. And I think these people are at the mercy of Amazon. It's a temporary job. It's shot in a way that's miserable. They are just cogs in a wheel. There's no joy. It's lifeless. Like people are like, "Oh, this is pro Amazon prop." Like, what are you talking about? Like again, just I don't understand like how
We must
people
have
come
watched
to
different movies.
Yeah.
conclusions of like what about that looked like a good thing to you, and you're just waiting on the next 3 month stint that you can do something with no passion or joy behind it for a barely enough money to exist.
I was gonna say,
um
and it seemed like that scene where her van breaks down and she's like on the phone with her friend trying to get her to lend her the money, and she's like, "I can go work back at Amazon." Like it didn't seem like she was, thrilled to go back and work there. It was just a way to get a paycheck in order to, make it do. Like,
yeah, yeah, and
I must
I
have
mean
watched
that's
different
just
movies
that's
and
like
people
the
think this is
gig
pro Amazon.
economy like lifestyle. I mean it's just people are so reliant on these things, but I think the moments you see her actually being able to express any kind of humanity or joy or anything are with people and with nature. Like I think she has genuine like wonder for the world, and I think it shows like those two things are a great way to heal no matter what you have going on, like spending time by yourself, like looking at the world carefully and like appreciating it, and like even the scene with her like meeting all those animals and just like it's some of the most emotion you see from her in the entire movie. And the scene in the forest with like the redwoods or whatever they are, like, and she's just kind of like marveling at it, like connecting with nature. I think helps people get through a lot of stuff. Um, but the community in this is like what makes any of this remotely tolerable, right? Like without that,
Yeah.
it's just you don't have much. But I loved what these people were doing in this movie. I mean, they're not. You could tell they're not actors, and I'm glad. Like they just felt like people talking, and I think she just felt like she was a person listening. And you know what? You can say this is out of touch, whatever, but like I'd prefer a star gets this movie made and we hear those stories than we never hear those stories, right? Like it's a weird like this movie isn't getting made without Frances McDormand. That's the sad part of it. So like,
And it's like you
I
were
think
saying with her backstory and how she was raised. Like it's better that it was her than someone like Jamie Lee Curtis.
yeah, yeah. Um when Dakota Johnson makes this, I'd be like, ooh. But
I wanted to give
This
some
would drop
context.
like 3 stars for me.
Yeah. What's
I'm
done?
gonna give some context of what I said earlier, just so I have it like quoted correctly. But someone asked her if she related to Fern, and she said she did. Also, in her 40s, she told her husband that when she turned 65, I was going to change my name to Fern, smoke Lucky Strikes, drink Wild Turkey, and hit the road in an RV. So I got to realize a bit of my fantasy, except that I rolled my own and drank tequila. And the thing she said here is that she said that this entire experience dispelled her romanticism about hitting the road in a van. It was a good slap in the face about reality of the whole thing and explain exactly why so many people are drawn to that choice economically. I think Jessica, or yeah, so basically she's talked about the book there too. So the book is really informative about why people do this. I just think that the only, I think well, you're saying that I agree with everything you guys have said. For me, it's the fact that we never really. She does have, it seems like, inconveniences, right? But she never seems like she's hating her life. That's the thing. Even though economically this has steered her in this direction with the shutdown of the factory, it always seems like she's almost enjoying this experience and tolerating it. It's like she's not hating her time out there. Like there's multiple scenes of her just walking just in a stretch of desert and just looking out and loving nature and everything like that, which is fine. I mean, this is can be why people do this, but like you never see like like she's not gonna make it. I don't know. Like I think that I don't know. I'm not part of this life. You know, this is a fictionalized story of this character. This is not based on a true story of what is happening to her. So I don't know. Maybe in my mind, I just feel like, and I've heard in this book, it's a lot harder than it seems like in this movie to do.
I think I don't agree with your characterization of Fern. I feel like this is the most miserable movie we watched by like a mile. I think she seems incredibly depressed and unhappy, basically the entire movie. Um, I also think I feel like more so the point of the movie is the nomad lifestyle as a way of breaking away from the system. Like that is what these people are actually talking about. Like they don't want to be a part of the system anymore. So they say, I'm going to accept consequences or difficulties XYZ to dictate my life and go where I want to go and spend my time how I see fit. And you might have to make sacrifices of like, you know, being part of like a gig job or something like that, but it's a trade-off. Like you're trading freedom for um struggle in a way. And I think like I think I said when I wrote down, I think every one of us does that, right? Like we all are trying to find a balance with our job or whatever it is of like having freedom and then having enough like financial stability, um and then accepting certain trade-offs for, you know, whatever it is you value in your life. And I think a lot of people don't do a good job of that, or get too focused on their career or their job or this and that. And it's like when you die, none of those people, like your career won't remember you. Most of us, right? Like the things that you'll remember or the people that will remember you are the people that you poured your time and effort into while you were here, or the experiences, you know, that you had are what ultimately ends, matters in the end. So I just think, I don't know, I think it definitely felt like I felt like it was more of a struggle than I think you did.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of both of you. That like I definitely think she was struggling, but like I also think it was like one of those she's been struggling for so long that she's almost numb to these big inconveniences. And
That's a
so
good
she
way.
just
That's a good way
keeps
of looking at it.
moving. And like and we see her like the small inconvenience, but when that guy drops her mom's plates and like shatters them on the ground, like we actually see her visibly upset. And I think that's when we get to like, in my opinion, the best scene in the movie is at the end when she's talking to that guy and he's talking about how his son killed himself. And he's like, but this community in itself has given me hope that I will always see someone, whether it's in a week, a month, or years later. He's like, I still always run into people I've met, and it's given me hope that I will one day see my son again. So I think that's the first time we actually see some light in Fern and like some hope.
I think it's the mix of the cinema verite style slash documentary that kind of gives this film, to a degree, no tension, which is why I think is where like you're finding like that issue of it feels like it because it's miserable, but there is this feeling of, I would say for me, no tension in this film. This film is just very matter of fact. It's the visual storytelling of the director, but what we're watching is just very, this is what it is. It's slow, it's methodical. It's a day in the life each time we were watching it. But it's just very matter of fact. And this is just the life that she's in is just what we're witnessing, and we're just trying to see her make it day by day. And when you're used to it, it's normal. So it doesn't feel like, there's this push and pull of drama going on, but internally it is. And until we get certain moments, we do see it. We do see her, break like the plates, but we have to get to those moments. But that's like real life. A lot of people live in this detriment of poverty and traumatic events, and you just constantly keep going. You don't stop, but there are moments that will make you stop.
And I just want to make sure Connor mentioned her talking to that guy at the very end of the story. I just want to make sure I got what happened at the end, basically. So I believe she went back to live with Dave, right? And she found closure in talking with that gentleman, as in, hey, you actually don't say goodbye to anybody. It's just like, hey, I'll see you again later. So the reason why she never left the Nomad Land was because she thought that she was saying goodbye to her husband if she did that and forgetting him. But talking to that gentleman gave her closure that even if she leaves the space, she will again one day meet him. So that's why she went back to the storage units and basically gave all of those items back to them, because that's the very beginning of the movie. She takes them out, she puts them right back in, and they're like, "Are you sure? Like, you want to do this?" And then she's like, "Yeah, I don't need them. I'm good to go." Goes and sees her old home, and then just walks away to the left. And I got that she's probably going to go see Dave, correct? And live with him because she's okay with doing that now, knowing that she's not, forgetting her husband by doing that. That's what I got.
I think that's
Yep.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Cool. All right, just make sure.
I don't know if everyone else does this, but like a lot of times when I'm watching a movie, I try and like imagine myself as the main character. Obviously, I'm not doing that with Oppenheimer or like a John Wick, but like that's I think that's why I like
John
Nomadland so
Wick's the
much.
best time to do it.
I think that's why I like Nomadland so much, because Frances McDermott's portrayal of Fern is like very relatable, and like one of my favorite things in this world is meeting new people and hearing their stories. Because like, I mean, if you think about who tells you the best stories too, it's not your best friends or your family. It's the people that, are brand new to your life, because I don't know if it's they want to impress you or it's a story that they care about so much, but everyone in their life has heard it 1,000 times that they just don't want to say it anymore. So I love meeting new people for that aspect. And like this movie kind of gives you that sense of like you're always constantly meeting someone new or someone you haven't seen in years that now have these new stories to tell you. I think this is the third best movie we're talking about today.
Uh, no, but it's okay. We'll get to that. But
It's at the bottom for me, but it's still a really good movie. But out of the ones we saw, it's at the bottom for me.
I'll say one thing I also found really interesting. We like brushed by it a little bit. Was I did find it really interesting. Just there's a lot of jobs. Just a lot of she picks up a lot of, making ends meet jobs that she'll either get. I think she just gets enough money. That way she can just go on the road. She's like she works there for a certain amount of time and just like, okay, I'm good to go. But then also she like works at campsites that she's camped at. I think that's really interesting that those places do that probably all the time. Like, hey, free, basically, I guess free, maybe room and board in a sense if you work for us. Like, you could park your van here and just live your life. Those are all really interesting. I mean, she has like probably 5, 6, 7 jobs, and then also she always works at Amazon during Christmas, I believe, because that's when probably it's at its peak season. So Yeah, not pro Amazon at all. But I will say, Amazon didn't seem like a terrible place to work while she was there, and I've heard stories that it's not that great.
Yeah, I've heard Amazon is awful to work at.
Yeah, I thought it looked miserable, but
Have you worked in a factory? I've worked in a factory, so I'm like, it doesn't look that bad to me. But
I've worked in a couple and it didn't look stellar.
like, we could buy speakers and like have them like, I don't think you could do this at Amazon. I worked in a car factory making automotive parts, so I could like have a speaker and just like blare music as I like took these hot pieces of plastic and like I had to like cut 3 things off of them and put them in a shelf, and I did that for 12 hours. Lots
damn.
of fun.
I was gonna say my first job when I got out of the Marine Corps was working in like a factory building parts for aircraft carriers. So
Yeah, factory works. I mean, my brother's done factory work for, 12, 13, 14 years. And he doesn't do that anymore. Like, he's gotten up in the business, in the company, but still takes a certain person to do that. And I respect them tremendously for it, because Lord knows that we need whatever they're making.
Yeah. What did you guys rate this?
I have it at a 4.5.
4.
4.
4 for me as well.
Dan, I think you were away, but I said this is the third best movie we're talking about today.
Okay.
In
Yeah,
my-
I had it at a 4.5, and I ended up dropping it down to a 4 when I thought about it, but I still enjoyed it. And I think this and Coda like could have been god fucking awful in my opinion, but
Yeah.
they were both, I enjoyed both. So
Before we move on to Coda, do we want to go over what the other nominations were this year?
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
good
it
job.
was
I haven't pulled up. If you need, Dan.
yeah, go ahead.
All right, so obviously
Okay.
Nomadland won. Other than that, it was The Father, Judas and the
Movie.
Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. I've only seen 2 of these.
That's
The only
interesting
one I
collection of
haven't
movies.
seen is The Father. Seen everything else. Um, Out of all of this, for me, would have been, I feel like it's a tie between Judas and the Black Messiah and Minari. I feel like Mank got there because of the whole, a movie about a movie, because
Oh,
it's not a
God.
good movie. And I mean, I love Sound of Metal. I was surprised that he got nominated for Best Picture, but it was a really good film, and I think that lined us up for Coda the following year. And then I really enjoyed The Trial of the Chicago 7. Netflix always gets one kind of in there. But yeah, Mank. What he got 2 in there, Mank, and I don't know. I feel like they paid somebody off for that one.
I was gonna say the only other one I've seen is Minari.
So
I
I like
think
this.
I think it was The Father. I think it's the best movie of that year. But yeah, looking at the net, we can go right into the next year. It was Coda, Belfast, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, King Richard, Dune, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. So, like, much stronger year, I think. Also just more movies.
I
Not
don't think that Coda should have won.
I think Dune and West Side Story are better, but a few of these movies I think are I mean, I think Licorice Pizza is terrible.
Same.
Yeah. Power of the Dog is a very interesting movie. I don't think it's not my favorite thing, but I think it's worthwhile. I just watched Evil Does Not Exist last year. I really want to watch Drive My Car. I haven't seen it yet. Belfast is fine. It's okay.
That's Kenneth.
Do you guys have thoughts on what should have won?
Again, another year that I haven't seen a lot of them, but Dune is my favorite of these.
I would have given it a West Side Story. West Side Story is so damn good.
I haven't seen
Yes,
it.
I agree.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's I feel like I'll be in a minority for this one. For me, I really enjoy Coda. I felt like when I watched that movie, it's kind of like Parasite, but in a way of I felt like this is not the type of movie that it's like when people think of like Hallmark movies or like those really feel good movies. I was like, if you want the top, Coda is it. Um, but I was like, I just didn't see that being the movie to win. I feel like out of the last few years, that was the biggest surprise for me because I would have thought it went to West Side Story. But even as a strong group of movies, like I was surprised that Nightmare Alley was in there. I like Nightmare Alley, but I don't think it's good enough to be Best Picture. Dune, understandable why it's there. Power of Dog, like Dan said, very interesting movie. Should it be there? I don't know, but I mean, West Side Story. But it feels like, as much as everybody loves West Side Story, that felt like a movie that everybody loved that nobody saw to a degree. Outside of like my film people, but even then, for that year, I don't even know if that was my favorite movie of that year when I saw those films. But
You know, a movie that nobody saw was Coda, because this was,
Apple,
I think this was the first year. I don't think it's happened. No, it hasn't happened since. This is the only streaming movie that's ever won Best Picture.
yeah,
So, and it's Apple TV. It's not Netflix. And this is
yeah.
Apple TV in 2020, 2021. Not a lot of people have it. Severance wasn't popping off like it is right now.
I
Yeah,
think Coda was one of my first reviews on TikTok.
nice.
And I think that year, because I'm looking at my top 20 films of the year, it was my 14th favorite film of the year when I saw it.
Did
And my
everyone
number
going
one
into
was
this
Come
know
On,
it?
Come On. But I feel like that was a movie nobody really saw.
Did everyone going into this know what Coda stood for?
No.
Going in, no.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. Because this is a rewatch for me. So I don't think, yeah, I don't think going into it I knew. But I think what you said, physics, is why I love this movie. It went down a little bit for me. I've just watched a lot more movies since I first watched this movie. I think I watched it back in 2022, maybe. So I watched it quite a while ago. I really enjoyed it. But I think what you said is the reason why it didn't hit me as hard is because it's like a really good feel good movie. So there's really nothing in this that surprises me, if that makes sense. Which it doesn't. Movies don't have to do that, but I don't know. It's like it hits the story beats that you're kind of expecting it to hit, and besides being a very interesting look into the deaf community, into a deaf household, I don't think this, in my opinion, really offers a lot more than that. Obviously,
Besides
everything
doing
about
something that's never done in film,
okay, well, the story itself, you know what I'm saying, like the beats that happens, and she gets into Berkeley and all this stuff. She meets the boy, she falls in love with the boy. All that, like, I don't really like the music teacher. I get why he's there, and teachers are so important, but I feel like he could have been maybe fleshed out a little bit more, in my opinion. He does have the interesting factor of him going to Berkeley and not necessarily doing too much with it, but he's okay with that, which I think is a little bit interesting about his character. But in my opinion, he's like the I don't know. I guess he is like the fifth main character after the family itself. But I wish he was more of a factor.
He might be my favorite character in the movie.
yeah, I feel like he's really important, and I feel like they make a purposeful choice to have him be someone from like an international background because he's able to connect with her. I think in regards to discrimination, and I think they make a way of saying that without beating you over the head. And I think even at the end, when she is having her audition and he comes in to play the piano, like the way those three look at him is, and like they're literally like laughing at him essentially, and you can tell it's just like they're very dismissive of the entire situation almost, and the two of them, and I feel like um I think
As an
that was
elitist.
yeah, I think that was kind of the main point to have that connection, like someone who can understand in a way at least, you know, something about like being othered. But I think I think what this movie does that's interesting is everyone kind of sucks at various points, like really badly. Like most of these characters have a scene that's like kind of despicable almost.
Yeah.
And it's almost off-putting in a way, but like I think that makes it feel real because what you understand with this is like nothing about this is easy. Um, and it's not portrayed to be easy. It's this immense weight of Ruby essentially having the weight on her shoulders of like supporting her family in a variety of ways as an interpreter, and especially when you bring in their business being reliant on her in a lot of ways, like it's so much pressure and she cracks under that pressure. And I mean the fact that she just when the I forget what regulatory person is going with them, but when she just like bails on that,
That's
I
wild.
was like, holy, like you are just kind of a bad person, huh? Like
Yeah.
that was, but at the same time, it's like you're seeing her just completely kind of fracture and not be able to deal with it. And I think that's very real. Um, and I thought that was interesting. I think this movie was a little bit more challenging than I thought it would be. Um, I and like I think what's most interesting here, and it kind of sucks because it's a movie about deaf representation. It's really kind of a movie about Ruby in a way because music is so central to this, and I think what you see with the music is key to her expression, but her expression has been so muted by like growing up I think with his family, and she feels like there's something in her way of like actually letting things out and actually like letting loose, but she's also very much holding on to how she feels about the family being reliant on her. So I feel like there's so much repression. Um, but I think seeing her just kind of very gradually, and I think it's well paced out, work through that and be able to actually express with her voice, like I think it's pretty powerful. But um, and that last scene with her recital when the whole build like a movie like this typically would build up to that moment and it would be feel good. Maybe she would start signing there, and that would be like oh, this is so nice. It just turns off all the sound and you just sit there with the parents' experience. That to me was perfect. Like that to me made the
Yeah.
movie so much better because that could have been hokey, but that scene is uncomfortable. And you see how uncomfortable the parents are because they can't take part in this experience that would be such a highlight for any parent. And that's you see how painful that is. Like you actually get to experience that. Um, but it also shows you with the camera, they're able to take it in through reaction. Now, is that a good substitute? No, but it still at least provides them um some type of way to understand, and they see people crying and smiling, and like I think it shows just like um the power that music has to convey emotion and connect people, and really any kind of art. But that scene was makes the movie so much better, I think. And then yeah, I kind of didn't expect to like this, to be honest. Like when it started, I was like I don't know about this, but because I think something like this can be very like flat and safe and condescending, to be honest. I think that's a fine line you walk with this, but I really liked it. So um, I don't
But
know. I thought it was a little bit more challenging.
I think it worked because it took the Parasite route of everybody here at a certain point is going to be very horrible to each other.
Yeah.
I think if everybody was good, it would have fell into the usual thing we've seen. Um, but like when I saw it on Apple, I watched it the week it came out. It surprised me. Like I was not expecting to enjoy this movie. I was not expecting to once we get to the end part and that sound goes out to then have such a emotional reaction to that scene because of they're not able to hear it. They can't really understand what's going on outside of what they're visually seeing. But even in that moment, once they get the clarification that like Ruby did a great job, there's then this sense of, you know, we're gonna have to let her go. And we don't know how we're going to survive without her being here because of how integral she is. And that makes me think of a ton of people like I've grown up with that are very integral to their family, and they couldn't leave. They had to stay home because they had to make sure everybody was taken care of. And that's a hard thing to do, to know that you're basically graduating from high school to be a caregiver and you don't have a say in it. And a movie surrounded by sign language and deaf people, that's about finding your own voice through music. Like I said, it could have went a horrible route. Like, I'm pretty sure there's multiple movies that have tried this and have been horrible, and we have no idea about it. Um, but this is one of those ultimate comfort movies that feels like you go into one of your favorite restaurant spots where the people behind the counter are not that nice, but you know the food is going to be great. And you know you're going to leave happy by the time you finish your meal. And that's what the feeling I got watching Coda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. One thing that like wrecks me always is, and it got me on the second try. Or even though I didn't like this movie as much, like I said, I really do love this movie still. Um, it still got me on the second time around, even though I knew it was coming. Is I can't see big burly like manly men like cry, man. That really gets me. And the thing with the throat, and he's just sitting on the tailgate, and it's such a like she sings like a whole like verse and maybe like a chorus too. And Tony, I think it's Kotzer is maybe how you say his last name. I mean, he won an Oscar for this. And he's really good. And I think it's also the fact that they make a very smart decision. Is that maybe? I mean, I don't know about more than any of these other movies that we're talking about. These characters feel so alive, and I guess that makes sense because they have to be have a lot of expression to in general, just because they don't know necessarily how they sound, but also just sometimes get their point across.
Well, that's also a big
So
part of ASL.
yeah. So the fact that I don't think the boyfriend and the girlfriend like dynamic is that interesting, but what is more interesting is how he reacts to her family, right? And I love when when she's embarrassed by them, and he's like, "Dude, my parents don't even fucking love each other." Like, it's awesome just to see that. Like, I don't care that they do sign language. Like that. That's what was my takeaway from that. I think that's cool how like love can like rise above whatever barrier there is there, and that's like the main takeaway is like who the person is, not necessarily what their disability is.
Yeah. I had to watch this movie twice this week. I don't know if you guys had this issue, but the closed captioning, which is obviously very reliant in this movie, was like off by a lot. And it was just pissing me off the whole time because my wife is fluent in sign language and watched this with me. So she was like laughing at jokes before I even knew what was going on.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, she's trying to teach me. So I know some sign language.
I
I
think.
was
Sorry, go on.
Oh, you're
I
good.
would say one thing about this movie, unfortunately, is the Marley Maitland. She had a documentary come out at Sundance this year. I did get a chance to see it, but I saw one of her interviews where she talks about. She was like, Coda won, and I haven't worked since then. And it's that one of those Oscar things where it's like we uplift these movies and the people that are in these movies,
In the moment.
and then we just kind of afterwards don't do anything with it. It's the same thing with, unfortunately, certain black actors or actresses. If you haven't already put in years of work, if you are a Lupita Nyong'o, people start wondering like, where are you? Why did you win this award and you're not really seen? And a lot of times it's usually because there's no roles for them, and there's a ton of characters in here that are deaf that we haven't seen since then, which is an unfortunate thing because you would think this would have opened a lot more, especially things like TikTok where ASL is a huge thing, and but it's a non-factor once we get outside of this movie, because outside of this, the only other sign language movie I've ever seen is a film called The Tribe, which is a foreign, I think it's Serbian sign language film, which is one of the hardest, saddest films I've ever seen. But if you get to watch it, you should. And I saw it with a group of deaf students because we have Gallaudet University near DC, which is an all deaf university, and they were shocked and about everything they were seeing. But they also said it was one of the most realistic things they've seen portrayed about being deaf and being a teenager.
And I
Did
think
you?
like you mentioned, Stone and Connor, the performances like from the family, like these are more expressive, better performances than like a lot of performances we watch. Like because like you have to be expressive as you're signing to like it's almost like another challenge to, especially I think if a lot of people who check out easily watch this, and, people don't even want to watch international movies with subtitles, and like if they can't hear anything, people might be off put. So it's like almost another challenge for the actor to hold your attention um while they're signing, but like they're able to express so much of like what they're trying to say. um there's a member of the like hard of hearing community in like film talk, Nico Young. I asked Nico if he had seen this or like what his thoughts were because I was curious to actually get a perspective from someone who was in the community, and he said he hasn't watched it yet, but he's talked to a ton of people about it and most of them love it. He said most of the like I think this takes a little bit of flack, I guess, sometimes about representation, this and that. But he said a lot of that comes from people who are not part of the community. So he said he was going to watch it and let me know. But everyone should check out Nico, please.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Also, when physics was talking about actors kind of getting used and then ignored, I think that often happens with women too, especially like women directors. And Siahan Heder was the writer director here. Um, she, I guess, really hasn't done anything since. It looks like she's working on a project called Being Human, spelled Heumann, with a woman named Ali Stroker, who is paralyzed from the chest down. So it looks like she's going to try to tell another story with an actor who's, dealt with some challenge in her life, and I'm excited to see that. But like, why? How is it taking this long to get
Yeah.
another opportunity? It's like it's a good, really good movie. I don't know. It's strange. And it makes it feel a little weird, like, okay, this is your one moment, and then we throw you in the trash, you know? Um, I don't know.
I would say this out of the best pictures, I am surprised that Tragedy of Macbeth didn't get a best picture nod.
So good. So good.
That like I could understand why Come On didn't get one, but I just felt like just how technically good and just how great Denzel was.
And
I
Francis.
I I don't understand how Tragedy of Macbeth just didn't get any nod towards a best picture.
A24, man, just does not know what they're does not know what to push. Crazy.
And
One thing
Tick Tick Boom as well. Like I really enjoyed that, and yeah, well, I don't know.
I say one thing that surprised me also about the story is the interesting relationship that the brother and the sister have. Because he, out of everyone in the family, like they don't, the parents don't care that they're dependent on her, like they're really dependent on her, but he has an issue with it, and it makes complete sense because in a way, through his eyes, he is looked at as the inferior child.
Yep.
He is less important than she is because he cannot obviously interpret for them. But then I love that he's just like, dude, and he's like a good brother too, because he's like, dude, just go to like you need to go, right? I think he even says that he might say that to her before her performance. I don't know. He might say that, but he's like, people are gonna have to learn to live with us. Like, they'll get used to us. Just like go. Like it's their problem, not your problem. And I thought that was really powerful. And I think I don't know if her friend was. I think I want to say her friend was 18. That way, like her relationship with him was like good to go. I couldn't help but thinking that like she's still in high school and he's not in high school and there was something there, but
Yeah. Um, I just wanted to say quickly. I said, I think I said in my review is one of the reasons I love. Have you guys seen Lars and the Real Girl?
Haven't.
It's basically it's a movie. It's a Ryan Gosling movie. Please watch it. It's like one of my favorite movies of all time. But um, basically it deals with like mental health and depression and this and that and how the importance of communities in looking out for people in any way that need help. And I think or not need help, but just have some type of challenge that they're dealing with. And I think this movie does an interesting thing with that conversation stone where it's like communities have to help people as well. It's not on people to adjust, you know, to you and have to, go out on a limb and twist themselves up in a knot to just try to make things work or have be rely on one person. Like communities should be one. Like they should all look out for each other. Um, and I think this movie makes a point of saying that as well, which I think is important. And regardless of anything, I think that's a really good message, no matter what community you're talking about. Because we're all just people, and the movie shows us we all deal with the same stuff. Like I like how it shows them as like very passionate people and like lovers, and they fight and they work hard and they struggle. They have the same conversations as everybody else has, and like um, I think the best way of rather than trying to again, you can make this stuff condescending. I think it's best to just show people living and just show their lives and let you get into it. I think um, a movie I love is Fruitvale Station, um, because I think rather than saying, "Oh, all police are awful," this and that, and trying to beat people over the head with the message that needs to be told, it doesn't do that. It just shows you this was just a guy living his life. He was flawed. He was a good guy who was just like us. He made mistakes. Just existing, and then just show that end. And that there's nothing more powerful than that. And you don't have to say then the other part. Like obviously, um, what's the actor's name who plays Kevin Durand is horrible in that, and he what he is speaks for itself. We all know that. But understanding the person that died was not just like a faceless person. It was just a human being. Like I like that. So um, I think like just stories that show people as people are important, even if they're not always like with Coda. It's not the most revolutionary thing, but it gives you a window into something you don't think about necessarily. So I liked it.
Oh,
Stone, your audio is cutting out.
Sorry about that.
all
I
right.
was actually I was on mute because I didn't want you guys hearing the fact that I was eating a breakfast burrito. Breakfast burrito is gone right now. I scarfed it down.
Okay,
Lovely wife brought that in and a coffee.
that's nice.
Um, it says "you rock" on it. I think that was maybe someone was trying to flirt with my wife, but that's fine. I'm just kidding. um, but one, I wish these aspects of the movie would have stood out, and they didn't. And I think it would have made it just better for me personally. Is I don't think anything really special going on with the cinematography. There's not like a single shot in this where I was like, oh, really impressive, which is fine. That doesn't make it a bad movie. And also, I can't necessarily. There's a lot of music in this, but I can't necessarily remember a score at all. I just like scores. Wish there was a cool score in here. And I wanted to say this might be a hot take. I wanted to say this with our last film. I think Nomadland has the best score out of any of these films. I love Nomadland's score better than Oppenheimer and better than Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's very soft and pleasant and very much matches the film. It's just piano at the start and then strings come in periodically in and out, and it's really really relaxing. But yeah, I just wish there was some type of memorable score in this. There's memorable music, but
That's it's Ludovico Iannati, who I actually was just talking to Kev about. He's like an amazing pianist. I think it's the same guy. Um,
who did Oppenheimer?
no, who did Nomadland.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's a very nice score. Um, yeah. Do you guys have any closing thoughts here? Or do you want to keep rolling?
Well, I would say with the whole it's the Nikola Jokic of movies. It's very workmanlike. It's not flashy. It might throw a behind the back pass every now and then, but it's just going straight to the hoop. You're not going to pretty much stop it. That was just basically all that Coda was, and it worked.
Yeah.
It got the championship.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no big flaw. I liked it a lot. I gave it 4 stars.
Same
I
here.
I came up. I did have a 3.5, but I was like, I really like this movie. Like,
Yeah.
and like you said, it's Nikola Jokic. Like, it'll always be a solid thing to watch. You know. So, we can get into talking about everything everywhere all at once if you all want. Um, this movie was like the movie, and it might be a little bit late, but it really made me fall in love with films. To be honest, it was kind of it blew me away. I watched this 3 times in the theater, and I think I've watched this like 6 or 7 times. Now it's been some time since I've seen it on this rewatch that I did last night. Um, I think this is just insane from a technical perspective. Um, and the fact that I believe they had 5 CGI like artists on this, like doing all this visual work, and it's so interesting because you can tell it's a low budget film in a way, but it is so much. There's so much detail and expertise, and everything is executed. I think this is the best editing in any of these movies, and it kind of has to be because there's so much going on, and the fact that they're able to put all these pieces together and it works is truly remarkable. And I think I've always said that watching this on rewatches just gets better at a point because you get more of this world and these universes, and the fact that all this connects it's truly it's unexpected. Like, I didn't think all this would work, but it does, and the way this plays out. I'm just rambling right now, but I mean, this got Ki Hugh Kwan, Michelle Yeoh, Jamie Lee Curtis, which I don't know how. I don't know how it's Stephanie Shu is so good in this, and
She
Jamie
paid
Lee Curtis.
somebody.
She's really an afterthought in this. Jamie Lee Curtis doesn't even have like a scene. I don't know what the scene is. Maybe sitting and smoking a cigarette and being like, "I drove a Prius through my husband's house" or whatever she says. I don't know if that's the scene. Her showing off the butt plugs. I don't know, but it's fine. I'm a little upset that she won and not Stephanie Shu. But obviously the Daniels, and then I've been much anticipating the Daniels' newest film that's coming out 2026, like with Steven Spielberg. Um, but yeah, Dan, I'm really curious what you think of this movie because this is one of a special movie to me, and it's a very popular movie, which I think is really interesting coming from how small it was, and this thing just it like never died down that entire year, which was really interesting to see, especially because we're seeing like recency bias a lot with the movies that came out this year. The fact that this came out, I believe, in March in 2022, and it was just able to carry that wave into the Oscars. What do you think about Everything Everywhere All at Once?
I like it.
Mm,
Um,
there it is.
I feel like I feel like a lot of people say like this is their favorite A24 movie, this and that. Like, I think it's good. Um, a lot of the humor in this, like I just stared at blankly, to be completely honest with you. Like I feel like a lot of the humor just gets kind of no reaction from me, and but that's something that either works for someone or doesn't. I like this movie. I like the action in this movie. I think it's really well choreographed. It's a lot of fun. I mean, this was made for Jackie Chan, and like that shows. I'm, I think them changing it up gave it more of a heart. So maybe it was originally supposed to be more of a straightforward kind of action thriller type movie, and they wanted to have more of that dynamic. I think like it's a lot of work to just not dislike gay people, huh? Like to be real, like could she just like not be hateful and the movie doesn't happen? Like I don't know. It's just like, is it that hard to accept your daughter? Like I don't. It's I don't know. Like it's that's kind. I think it's a little off putting when you really think about it. but also I think it's interesting in that it's a look at someone who maybe has been kind of a victim in their life and just allowed life to kind of drag them along. Looking back at a certain point and being like, what if decision XYZ was different? Um, I think that's interesting, and I think obviously being able to see different versions of yourself or your partner given different circumstances. Um, maybe they each could have been something more or something more impressive, but like at the end of the day, again, like we talked about with I guess Parasite, like at a certain point does it matter, or does it matter that like whatever you have in your life with your relationships is good and solid? Um I think this movie is good. I think it's like I have it like a really light 4. Um I don't know. I just think it's very, very simplistic in terms of what it's actually saying. I think I like the idea that I think what the movie is trying to say also outside of the emotional stuff is just life is ridiculous. Like life is absurd. The most insane things will happen. Um and you just kind of have to deal with them. And it's very like absurdist. Um and some of that stuff is entertaining and other stuff is not, but I get what it's trying to say. Um but I think I was a little bit underwhelmed. I had like half watched this before, and this was my first time like really sitting down and I think paying attention. So I don't know. It was good.
All right. Well, I proselytized this movie everywhere I went. I saw it. I made other people see it, especially people that had mother daughter issues. And basically, for them, it was kind of like seeing their dynamic on the screen, and not just having a gay child, but just a parent not trying to understand you because life is so busy and life is hard for them that they don't have time to understand what's going on with you. But this movie isn't everything bagel. It has comedy, has action, has a love story. You have drama, and then you have the absurdity. But at the end of the day, with all of the challenges of life and how hard everything is, it's okay at the end of the day to just be kind, to just be good and see the good in things rather than to see the fault. I'm a person that deals. I have a BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, and I have a hard time at times of dealing with the fact that like I feel like I failed at something, and I will constantly look at the past and decisions I made in the past, and dislike choices I made or choices that were made for me that were outside of my hand. Um, that I couldn't change. And that was the same thing with Evelyn. There was certain things that happened that her life could have went a different way. And no matter how her life was going to go, you should still be okay with where you're at and be present in the moment of where you're at and the people that are around you. Um, I'll say this, that's great. I love the action, it's amazing, but the best scene in the movie is when they're paying homage to what is the movie? The why am I blanking on it? Was it The Mood and Love? Where they're paying homage to that movie. And the one thing Wayman says is, so even though you have broken my heart yet again, I wanted to say in another life, I would have really liked just doing laundry and taxes with you. That no matter where we are, whether we are successful, we are living life great, at the end of the day, I just want to be with you. Um, Having that type of connection with somebody, no matter what universe you're in or what place that you're in, is a hard thing to have. And when you finally have that and you go through all the bullshit of that life gives you, and you know that no matter what happens, I have this person, it gutted me because I ended up having that person, even with all of the BS that comes with me having BPD. I have somebody that's willing to go through the fight with me. And I feel that's what a lot of the action in this movie is. Absurd as it is, it's fighting to make sure you protect the people that you care about, whether it's through kindness or it's through actual hand-to-hand combat. Um, but you got to find a way to love each other, see each other, and make sure at the end of the day everybody shines. And I enjoyed that this movie, like, it could have ended 10 minutes earlier, but the fact that her daughter just goes, no, like, you don't get off so easy. Like, you can't just apologize and then think everything is okay. There's consequences to the things you've done and how you treated me. But even the fact that in that moment, rather than just letting it be her mother fought for her to be like, I want you to understand that I still love you. I messed up and I want to work through this with you, but I can only do it if we're both on the same accord. And sometimes it has to resolve itself at times. But I really love this movie, and I'm like, yeah, there's no amount of great things I can say about this movie.
One thing I did really like was kind of the visual representation of like that the bagel or whatever they call like the black hole, and like the way that just consumes everything. And I think being able to see her daughter like expressing so much kind of pent up frustration and rage, and just like seeing the effects of just like not being seen and accepted, and how that can completely consume someone, and how, if if they allowed that, it could have destroyed their relationship, and in this world destroyed the multiverse or whatever. I think it was a really good representation, and like you said, Stone, like the amount of money they made this for is preposterous. Like it was like 20 million, I think, ish. um that is impressive, and I think impossible to ignore. I love Michelle Yeoh too. I just think she's a phenomenal actor. um yeah, I just does the humor in this work for you guys? Like, do you find things like particularly funny, or not funny? Like, how does that work for you? Because I feel like that's the one thing that like mainly kind of held me back here, but I don't know.
I will say I'm gonna compare this to Superbad because I've watched both of these movies like a lot, right? And they're both comedies, or they have comedy. Obviously, one is heavily a comedy, and then this obviously has comedy elements. I think the difference is that the comedy in this is a lot of physical comedy or like gags,
Yeah,
and not necessarily line delivery. As in Superbad, it's Jonah Hill, it's Michael Cera, it's what Bill Hader, Seth Rogen, it's what those guys are saying. So I have to admit, the comedy, the more I watch this, the more the comedy doesn't work on me. Like my fifth or sixth watch, as soon as that thing turns into a dildo, I'm not like laughing out loud because I know it's coming. The butt plugs, like I know they're gonna try to sit on it, everything like that. Um, so I will say the comedy, the more I watch this, the more the comedy doesn't work. And another thing too, I think what amazed me so much about watching this film was the fact that, and I love this. I mean, Companion was like this, but this is like Companion on the movie that just came out in theaters. This is, I mean, a lot of movies do this, but that's a new one that just comes to my mind. Is there's so many different things that they introduce at the beginning of the story that come back, and you don't know how they're going to come back, right? You do not know that the Rakakuni thing. You do not know that this, world
that's
where
pretty
she,
funny.
you know, like
I
that.
was gonna mention, I was like, out of all of the comedies, some of the line delivery between Key and Michelle Yeoh, it's not all the physical stuff, but the Rakakuni still hits.
Well, I think James Taylor, if I'm not mistaken, somebody is who's the voice of Rakakuni. Hold on, it's like
Randy
some
Newman.
Randy Newman. That's it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's seen
which
too
is really
much.
funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so finding how I was completely enthralled by finding out how all these things fit together, even towards the end, like the thing with my wife. My wife had that same perfume, and like, she sprays it on him, and Daniel, what's his name, Scheinert, is like the weird sex kink guy. I didn't think he would come back. He comes back. She spanks him. I was like, wow, like all of this is actually coming together in a way you just weren't expecting. on rewatches that doesn't hit as hard. Like that's why I was completely amazed with this movie is that they were able to take all these pieces and somehow put them together into a cohesive story and an epic, in my opinion, an epic finale. So that hits less and less for me the more I watch it. But what doesn't hit less for me is I was going to say this, Chris, with what you said, for a long time was incredible. Like what you just gave your opinion on this movie and how it affects you and everything. I think the relationships with this family, every single one hits. And like you said, you think this movie is going to end 15, 20 minutes earlier. With the grandfather, with the husband, and with the daughter, there's each different dilemmas, different confrontations that need to be dealt with. And they're executed, in my opinion, to perfection. It's really impressive. Obviously, the big, and they save it for last, the big finale confrontation is the daughter and Michelle Yeoh and Evelyn. But the fact that she's able to use that relationship with her daughter to fix the relationship with her father, right? And that she's working up to accepting Joy. And Dan, when you mentioned the fact that is it really hard, to accept that your daughter's gay, right? If that was changed, would this have even happened? I guess it's different from an immigrant family and for how someone's culture is. I think when it comes, unfortunately, to same sex marriages, I think as further and further we go along down the timeline of life, which is an incredible thing, more and more people are open to it, right? That's just how, like, probably my grandfather, not really a fan of it, to be honest, right? That's just how they were raised. That's how they were brought up. My parents, good. Me, even more open than my parents. I think that's just how it works. So the fact that Michelle Yeoh's father seemingly is totally against it, which is a nice surprise that he's not. I think it makes sense that Michelle Yeoh's character is a little bit, is standoffish when it comes to that. Um,
But I find that interesting because if he doesn't have an issue with it, did he ever? And
I don't know,
if he didn't ever, why is she the way that she is?
because
Because
maybe that's how it is in their culture, like back where they came from. Which they're
Chinese,
Chinese, right? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
because it's Chinese New Year. I'm stupid.
I think I think kind of like what you guys are talking about. The interesting thing this movie is doing, regardless of what I just said, but like the idea that we carry, like she's not able to have a correct relationship with Joy because she never fixed her relationship with her father, and she left that hanging over herself, and it created this black hole kind of within her that then affects the next generation, then that affects the next generation, and it just keeps going. And if you don't deal with that at any point, like if you never address it, it's just gonna destroy a family. So I think seeing the effects that um kind of unchecked generational trauma or difficulties can cause is effective. And Joy just kind of carries the brunt of then two generations of you know um, feeling this way, and I think that's kind of how she ends up as this villain. So I think it is effective in that aspect for sure.
And I mean, I mean, like you said, it goes down from Evelyn to Joy, but then they're opposites with Wayman and Becky. They're both the same. When Becky comes in, she goes, I always learn something when I hang out with elderly. Old people are very wise. She embraces her grandfather, in the same way that Wayman embraces her. It's like just being kind, just be kind off the bat, and you're going to be okay. Because then you have Wayman saying, the only thing I know is that we have to be kind. Please be kind, especially when we don't know what's going on. Like,
Yeah.
it's easy to be very shitty to everybody else. But if you're just kind off the bat, things could work out on your end. And I think one of talking just the when the kind of starts seeping in through the movie, through all of the nihilism that has happened before it. Um, it's it's the it's the fact that the Jamie Lee Curtis Evelyn scene where the hot dog hand scene where it randomly pops up on TV. We come back to it. Now we're in this universe where everybody has it, and you know, Joy and Evelyn, between the both of them, they both feel unloved. And then Jamie Lee Curtis as well feels unloved. And then that quote of you're like, you're not unlovable. There's always something to love. Even in a super universe with hot dogs for our fingers, and we're very good with our feet. So like we're all we're all valued to be loved at the end of the day. And it's better for us to grab onto that than to grab on the things that we don't like about each other and try to move forward with that.
Yeah.
What I think is powerful is that obviously the mindset, what you're saying right now is a certain mindset of my favorite character of the movie, which is Kyu Kwan, which is Wayman. And I think the reason why that is out of the family, Gong Gong, Evelyn, and Joy, he's the only person that's character doesn't change. He's
Yep.
the same person he is at the beginning as he is at the end. Everyone else's character develops. What happens is our view, our outlook on him changes because Evelyn's does. We see really who he is, but like I said, nothing really changes about him. We just understand why he acts the way he does. And I feel like that's really interesting in a story like this, how he, he doesn't seem like maybe he does have some flaws in the fact that he wasn't open with his wife and telling her like this is why he is the way he is. But I don't know, like and it seems like you do too, Chris. Like I have that mindset as well. Like I hate that the world sucks and I choose not to try to, and I feel like everyone does, but try to think about it too much and just try to be happy and not think about the darkness that's out there. It's really hard to, especially nowadays. But the fact that he's kind of the hero-ish of this story. He changes Evelyn's outlook. He changes, which is essentially changes Joy. I don't know. It's really powerful. I love Ki Hugh Kwan. I think he was. I think you're right, Dan. I think this movie would have been really different if Jackie Chan was in it.
Yeah. They wouldn't have been.
Um, and Ki Hugh Kwan does a really good job. I just watched Love Hurts with him.
And to be clear, really quick, I want to interject.
You could.
It's not that Jackie Chan was going to play the husband. It was going to be a
Oh,
movie.
that's
There was
right.
no
That's right.
Evelyn. It was just going to be about Jackie Chan's
Yeah.
character. So completely different movie. Sorry.
You're right. No, no, no. That needed to be said. Um, but I just watched Love Hurts, and I think Kyo Kwan's a good actor. Like, I think he was deserving of this win. Um, but it just needs proper directors, and like what the Daniels are able to get out of these people is and really really good, especially all like there's tons of like supporting characters, right? There's all these people in these different worlds that come back in a big way, and I think all of them really hit the tone that they're going for really exceptionally. And I'm really, and I mean both Daniels pop up in this movie. It seems like they had a lot of fun. I know this is a very personal story to Daniel Kwan. That was his last name I was searching for, and how he was raised. I think he was the son of an immigrant family and stuff like that. So I mean, have you guys watched Swiss Army Man?
Yeah. And I mean, once you see that movie, you kind of get the idea of what the humor is. And that's a movie that either works for people or it doesn't. Especially once you get towards the end of what's actually happening. But I would say with Kiyu Kwan's Wayman is like he is portrayed in the beginning as kind of weak, affable, and goofy, but he's the strongest character in the movie. As
100%.
he says, like, him seeing the good side of things, it's not him being naive, it's strategic and necessary because if he doesn't, it'll be hard for him to survive through everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Like, it would destroy him if he wasn't this way. And he's basically like everybody else just needs to catch up. Like I'm already here and I'm just trying to welcome y'all to where I'm at the moment.
Also, I love James Hung. Like he's so good in this. I love him as an actor, and I do like the part where the alpha Gong Gong like enters his body, and Joy's like, when did he get so good at English? he's just like he's like fucking killer or something like that. I can't remember exactly what he says, but it's really funny. Dan, what was your there's I feel like this is a movie about like moments. There's a lot of memorable moments in this film. I guess from me being a really big fan of this movie, and then obviously Chris as well. What was like the scene or the gag, or what was your favorite part that you think of?
Um, I think I did like the. I mean, I think with how kind of like grandiose this entire thing is, you feel like it's leading up to this just like ridiculous battle at the end, and it's going to be, sorry guys, I'm still a little bit sick. I'm coughing here, but
You're good.
it's going to be. I think what it ends up being is almost a little bit anticlimactic, but just the climax is the best part of the movie, in my opinion, because you're seeing, like I said, kind of everything I was talking about with like Joy is just pissed off, like she's angry, and I feel like you're seeing all of that like expressed, and Evelyn kind of just letting her guard down, and I feel like it's something we haven't talked about much, but I do feel like this is a movie very much about like I said, like I think life can drag you along. Like I don't think she's that happy with how it went. I feel like even the business, like getting involved with the business, she's like pulled into it. It's just like, here's your
Yeah.
life. And then you're 50 or whatever it is, and it's gone. And like I feel for her in a way because I feel like there is genuine regret, and I don't think that's really avoided. But at the same time, she has to find the value in her relationships, and that's because that's what you have. Like I said, at the end of the day, regardless of where life takes you, like and you mentioned the Wong Kar-wai in the mood for love reference. Like it's just about like the mundane, right? You find some people that you enjoy doing whatever with, and then you know whether you're in Nomadland living in a fucking van, or you're a deaf fisherman, or whoever you are, if you're with the people that you love, what's it matter? Doesn't matter what you're doing.
Unless you're Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Great transition. Yes.
What did you?
Yeah. I
What did you
mean,
think about the rock scene, Dan?
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. I thought that was kind of sweet, but yeah, I just wish, and I'll watch this. I will definitely watch this again because I would like to. I think I might appreciate it more. Maybe I'll appreciate the humor more. And I definitely a movie I really respect. Um, I just when I think about A24, there's other stuff I like more. But I'm happy I really dove into this. Connor, do you have any? We're kind of closing up here, but do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts?
I'll just give all my thoughts really quick. One funny story is the first time I ever watched this movie back in, I think it was 22 or 23. I genuinely thought halfway through the movie that it actually ended because they rolled the credits. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I turned it off and I didn't revisit it till like a week later the first time I watched it because I like went to go watch something else on whatever streaming service it was on. And it was like showing the bar on the bottom that I still had like half the movie left. And I was like, oh shit. I gave it a 5-star that time. This time I gave it a 3.5.
What? Why?
Yeah,
How did that happen?
I don't know. I was like so sad when I revisited it for this episode because I remember this movie like being awesome and like I just did not enjoy it nearly as much this go around. A lot of the humor didn't work for me. Like the only time that I actually like kind of chuckled was when Jamie Lee Curtis was on a rant about how good she is at her job and showed her awards and it was a butt plug. That made me chuckle. And that was about it.
Not Rakakuni? No Rakakuni for you?
I appreciated Raccooning. That was a lot of fun, but
I like that.
but I don't know. I mean, Michelle Yeoh is obviously great in this. Ki Hye Kwan. None of the performances are like terrible. Jamie Lee Curtis isn't memorable, really, all that much. Stone, did you hear what I rated this?
I was in the bathroom, but I heard you say none of the performances were terrible, which doesn't sound great. I don't know what the fuck.
No. I didn't say it like that. I said none of the performances were terrible. I have this at a 3.5 though.
That's fine. That's not
yeah.
that bad.
I just didn't like. I didn't appreciate it nearly as much. I hate saying this, but like it kind of felt like when musicians make a song like that's just meant to be like a club song. This felt like a movie they wanted to make just to win an Oscar. Is how like my biggest takeaway from it.
I
Wow.
don't agree with that because there's fucking
Yeah.
there's butt plugs and giant ass dildos in here that are like 15 inches long.
Yeah, I know, but like it felt like they were going for like a lot of wow factor with all that, and like to make it super memorable. I don't know.
I mean, Madam Web's memorable.
I don't think it's all.
Is
Doesn't
it
mean
though?
it's going for awards, but
That
I,
Pepsi can scene. Mwah.
yeah, just fiddling with it the entire time. That's good stuff.
I will say, regardless of how you feel, Connor, now I think if anyone hasn't seen this, like watching it for the first time is really eye opening, and I think
Yeah.
like some people despise this movie, but the thing is, no matter how you feel when you watch this, you'll feel something, right? Like you'll have a reaction, like it'll really work or it'll really not, and like that to me is what I like. I dread watching things where I just feel nothing. I would rather hate a movie than just, and that's why like I don't know. I see like there's so many movies I'm just like I'm not watching this. Like Netflix puts out all these movies and I'm just like I don't want to watch any of this. I'm not going to feel anything. Like I'm not going to waste my time. So,
Didn't you watch Lift?
He
bro, that
stopped
was
after that. That was the
January of
final.
2024. Lift is I watched Lift and I watched Upgrade. And after that, and I watched like 20 minutes of Unfrosted. After that, I was just like, I'm done. I can't do this. Like I'm just going to hate these movies. And like that might be entertaining for me to get on there and be like, this is bad. But like, what value is that? You already know that. Like, it's not
Yeah,
providing
that's fair.
value. Like, I don't know. So,
No, I have this at a 3.5, but I still I think maybe it was my own fault too, because this was the last movie I watched this week in order to get ready for the episode. I watched it last night, and I was like in my head, I was like, I'm saving it because I remember loving that movie. I don't remember everything that happens. I'm excited to revisit all these universes and everything else. And I think I just built it up too much in my head that I let myself down. But again, I have it at a 3.5. Like still think it's a good movie. I think everyone should watch it. That first time shock value is like amazing.
Like I still think that like the Daniels, like they've only done 2 movies together, and I think that just their craft in this is really unique and really effective. Like I'm just thinking, I remember there's this one they like always trying to make this engaging constantly, but they're always showing you different like viewpoints. Like there's this one I remember Evelyn like grabs a stool from one side of like the laundromat with her foot and like whips it across to like step on it to get to a washing machine. And just the fact it's so fast, but the fact that they just put that in there and there's like a musical like in a sound design with it as well. It's just really effective and like there's a lot of usage of mirrors in this as well. And I know it might be simple on the surface, but I like that every single time the chapter hits. So obviously there's 3 chapters in this, everything everywhere all at once. Evelyn's by herself. Evelyn is split, and then you have the very last all at once. The entire family is at the table together. That's really powerful. Entire family is doing taxes together, except Becky. I don't think Becky was there, but she's not part of the family yet. But yeah, humor. The humor. I knew that big dildo was coming, so when it flopped in my face on screen, it didn't hit as hard. It did hit that guy as hard, but not me.
you guys good to get into Oppenheimer?
Yeah.
I think this has to be the strongest list of Best Picture nominees, right? Because it
Agree.
was
Outside
Oppenheimer,
of
American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, fucking Maestro, goddamn,
outside of that one.
Past Lives, Poor Things, Zone of Interest. Like, holy God, that is. I think every movie there you can at least find something, except for Maestro, to really praise.
Feel
And
like
I don't even.
Godzilla -1 should have took Maestro's spot.
Yeah, among other things,
Yeah.
I no argument from me. Does anyone think Oppenheimer shouldn't have won?
Poor Things was my favorite movie. I understand why Oppenheimer won.
Poor
But
Things is my favorite of 23 as well, but I'm not upset that Oppenheimer won.
It's tough.
John?
I know me and Dan really like Anatomy of a Fall. That's a good ass movie. It's tough.
yeah.
It's just such a different film. It's just so different.
Yeah, my top
Um,
3 were Poor Things, Killers of the Flower Moon, and then Oppenheimer. So it was like if it landed on any 3 of those, I would have been happy. I mean, the holdovers, we got a new, Thanksgiving Christmas classic, and then Barbie. It wouldn't have surprised me if it won. I knew Zone of Interest wasn't I feel like if Zone of Interest came out this year, it would have. Just along with everything that's going on, Zone of Interest probably could have won. But I mean, Oppenheimer was also very timely, and it makes sense why it won.
Yeah, I think my top three of the year would be Poor Things, Oppenheimer, and Across the Spider-Verse.
I would say, Connor, with you saying that Everything Everywhere All at Once felt like an Oscar movie, and I disagree with that. I mean, it's not a terrible thing, but Oppenheimer 100% kind of feels like, no one's really going for it, and it works. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad movie, but the half, the different perspectives, the black and white. I feel like whenever you introduce black and white, usually into a movie, it's kind of like, yeah, this is like an artistic vision right here. Like, look what I'm doing, kind of a thing. But it works with the movie. That's the thing. Maestro.
I would push back on that really hard. I think black and white is used to help the audience understand where they are, and that's the only reason it's used. So I feel like it's not so much artistic as just this is a clear in this movie that's jumping all over the place. This is a clear differentiation of where in time you actually are, and I think that's helpful. Like if you made the entire thing in black and white, sure, but I don't know. I think Nolan's very like in a lot of ways he's very simple, and I think that's kind of an example of that. So
I
I would
guess
disagree with that.
I would push back in one area, but then also I think that you can find reasoning in this too that goes with what you just said. Is there's actually three different timelines in this. There's obviously up to the Manhattan Project, everything with Robert Downey Jr. and
Mhm.
Klaus, but then also his interrogation in that little room with all these guys, and that's in color. So it is, I think, lit a different way. So if that's in color, I think you could have had everything with Robert Downey Jr. in a color as well. But like I said, it's not necessarily just time, like you were saying. It's also perspective, right? That's
But
the
I feel
whole
like the
thing.
interrogation is always obvious where you are and what's happening. So I feel like
That
there's not need to differentiate that.
Well, you can also. Oh, that's true because the black and white doesn't. Because I'm thinking about the little courtroom that they're in when it comes to the black and white scenes. That is a lot of it, but that's not all of it. That
Yeah.
is true. That one, the interrogation only
Because
takes
the
place in.
interrogation is kind of like the framework for the entire movie. Like that's what you're kind of that's where you are, and then it's kind of building around that.
Right, and I'm saying
Um,
what Nolan said was the fact that it's not just the time period, but the subjective and objective like views on Oppenheimer, which
yeah,
I get that, which is powerful.
yeah.
But anyways, that's not the point of this movie. There's a lot more to this movie than just black and white. But interesting
I
conversation.
mean, my favorite Nolan movie is Memento, and it feels like everything he did in Memento, and I think also Dunkirk led him to how to format Oppenheimer.
Well, that's Nolan's thing. Like he loves messing with time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Dan. Maybe you can educate me. Being the Odyssey knower, is there something in the Odyssey that he can like mess with time? I mean, I know
Also,
it's a large amount of time, right? The story, the Odyssey
yeah.
is a
I'm
lot.
assuming I'm assuming that the Odyssey is not going to be. I'm assuming it's going to play out in order of how
Okay.
the events occur. Like it doesn't make sense because you want to build to his arrival. Like that's what you want to build to. That's the climax of the movie. So
Okay.
I think you might get. I don't know if you might get like flashbacks from the war or like I don't know, but yeah, I think it'll be relatively straightforward time wise. But he has there's so many challenges to
Or
make
do
it.
we
It's going
get
to be.
do
What's
we
that?
get Homer telling the story? Because it was an oratory story, so
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
just makes sense that
I
he would
doubt
do
he'll make
something.
it. It's not going to be boring. However, he decides to tell the story. But um, I think Oppenheimer was absolutely brilliant, and this is a movie where again, like a lot of the criticisms here, like made me want to rip my hair out, and I don't like. I try to not like. I generally. I don't mean to, like I don't really care what people think of movies. I like if you don't like something, that's completely cool with me. But if there are ways to approach things that are objectively just like incorrect in interpretation, like there are sometimes that sometimes can be the case, and I think if you're straight up saying like the author's intention is the opposite of what it was, I find that confusing. But I think this there's I mean, this we've already been going for a while. I think there's a lot to talk about here, but like from a very simple standpoint, I'd love to get your guys' take on the character and what is he? Like what are they trying to say about him? Um, I think that's a good place to start.
I actually think he might kind of tell you exactly what to think about him in the beginning when he first meets. Is her name Jean, Florence Pugh's character?
Gene Tatlock, yeah.
Yeah, he's like meets her, and she's like kind of harping on him that he hasn't fully joined the Communist Party yet, and he was like, "I think more about free thinking, and I don't really belong anywhere." He says something along those lines. And so I think he's just a man who likes to educate himself on like every kind of area of life. I mean, we see him learn how many new languages in this movie alone.
Yeah.
I obviously think that Oppenheimer was a brilliant man who just wanted to continue to pursue more and more and more and try to see how far his theory can go. And that's kind of what the bomb was, you know? He wants to see like, does this thing really work? And the government's kind of using his genius in a way to get what they want. So I think it's also the fact that he doesn't join the Communist Party. I think you're kind of hinting at this, Connor, is that he likes to think for himself. He doesn't like a concrete decision, right? So I think that's also why he has such a difficult job processing if what he did to the Japanese is right or not, because it's tough, right? And he has that horror. I can't believe that people still think that he doesn't paint him as a hero, right? It's kind of a tragedy in a way. It's like the world used this man's knowledge. You know, it's unfortunate that this is what was the most memorable thing about his life. And I think that this movie, the fact that it tacks on after the bomb is so important because this is about Oppenheimer, right? This is about what his life concluded to after the bomb and the ramifications of it, which is even more important. And I thought that was way more interesting. I can't believe that going into this movie, people just wanted the bomb and that was it. Because I think that you maybe knew that story, but what Nolan sets up, everything with the Communist Party, I had no idea about going into this film that he was so much affiliated with that. So, and that obviously is so important because it completely carries over to what happens after the atomic bomb and everything with Strauss. So, it's interesting that I like especially the ending where everyone's trying to, Benny Safdie, they're trying to shake his hand, and his wife stood up for him, and it's just like, we're gonna use you for your mind, and yeah, you're gonna take the consequences of it because it was your creation, but then we're gonna throw you away and just get, praise you when we want to and get rid of you when we want to. It's a tough life. He had a very tough life for a gifted man.
Yeah, I mean, I want to touch on what you just said about like everyone just knew about like the bomb too. I think there's like a lot of people in history. You could probably like pinpoint them, like you know them for this one thing, but you don't know shit about the rest of their life besides maybe our historian Dan. Um, but I remember like when I was in theaters watching this, and like all of the stories leading up to it was like Christopher Nolan didn't use CGI for the bomb and everything. So like everyone was like, "Oh, we can't wait to see this like explosion." I was baffled that that was like maybe just a little after the halfway mark in the movie. And I think that was like, I think after the bomb goes off, that's the best part of the movie. All the courtroom stuff, more stuff with Strauss and Robert Downey Jr., which is also, I'm disappointed that he's going back to the MCU for that because I'd rather see him do more projects, where we see him really acting rather than just playing a comic book character.
I would say with Oppenheimer, this is a movie about genius, hubris, and era. I mean, he's known as the father of the atomic bomb. That's all he's known for. He was this man that, was burdened with this genius, that also was able to kind of get what he wanted in life as far as outside of his relationship, his personal relationships. But when it came to the parasitic nature between him and the military, that wasn't the case. He had the more dilemma of science, of wondering, you know, what are the consequences. Like he's literally a god on earth with the creation of the bomb and the destruction that it caused. Um, and just the trauma, the psychological thought of the destruction that you cause in another place. And I think one of the strongest things I know that people hit this movie for is that we don't see the aftermath of what happens when this bomb drops outside of the horror scene that he has when, that the horror scene sequence. But I think it hits even harder, especially the Secretary of War scene, where it's very flippant. This bomb is going to drop no matter what. We're going to do this. We're not going to drop it on Kyoto because I had a honeymoon there and we had such a good time. And it's just like they don't see people living there. And it's funny because you watch a movie like Godzilla Minus One, and that second scene of just the destruction of the bomb dropping, even more horrifying than seeing what Godzilla has done, but just bodies strewn everywhere, amber flying everywhere. But in America, we did the good thing. Everything has went well. But now that everybody sees it as an atrocity, now it's pushed on Oppenheimer for creating this thing that he was pushed to create. He's not a good person. I mean, I feel like we've hit every movie. You can't be a good person. Every movie we've watched for the best picture. You can't be a good person, so then maybe that means Amelia Perez might win. Unfortunately. But I mean, he's not a good person, even when he's trying to be. And I think the Emily Blunt scene of telling it, like, you think you're this one thing, but you're not, and you need to come to terms with that and be okay with, and not be okay with what you did, but understand the consequences you did and move forward. And you can't shun it like you weren't a part of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had a lot to say about Emily Blunt and about Kitty's role in the movie. Emily Blunt has two of the best scenes in the movie and two of the most important scenes in the movie. One of them is her testimony towards the end of the film, where she just basically annihilates them and deals with them exactly how they should be dealt with and meets their aggression with aggression and defends her husband despite how he betrayed her and despite who he was. She still defends him because she sees through all the bullshit. And she also has the scene when he is um cowering behind that rock after Jean was most likely assassinated, which
Yeah.
the movie says, which is ballsy because that is not widely accepted. And I thought that was very interesting that they chose to show that because that shows the government as far more evil.
Hmm.
Um, and I again, people think this is U.S. propaganda, huh? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just simply not. But I think that scene where he's basically sitting there taking in her death, and she grabs him and says, "You don't get to sit here and be a martyr and feel sorry for yourself because of what you did." And that's, I mean, that is a, and again, I think that's kind of an oversimplification. Jean Tatlock was also, a lot of people thought she was gay, which is not touched on at all.
Yeah.
And a lot of her mental health struggles were with her sexuality. And I think she did have that relationship with him, but she was also struggling with either maybe being bisexual or gay or whatever. And if she did take her own life, that had a huge factor in it. And that's not addressed at all in the movie, which it didn't have time to do, but I think is important to know. Because this was at a time when, like, not being just heterosexual was viewed as like a mental illness, essentially. And that's how people were treated. So I think that's important. But like, her ties to like the Communist Party, she was viewed as a security threat, and she was close to Robert during the project, and everyone knew that. So, I think most likely the FBI killed her. She had a chloral, I forget what it's called. She had a drug in her system that when mixed with alcohol basically knocks someone out. So a lot of people think she was either taken somewhere else and drowned and then put back there to make it look like she drowned. There's a test you can do on a body to make sure that the water that drowned them was like clean and pure. And if it doesn't pass, they were most likely drowned in a river or something. They didn't do that. There's a lot of things that when you look into it don't make a lot of sense. but not to go too far that way. But I think Jean's really important in this. And the first time I watched it, literally my only critique in the movie was I didn't really like how she was used, and I thought it was a little odd and strange and felt out of place. But I think when you really understand her importance to all this, and the second time watching this movie, this really feels like a movie about paranoia and about the Red Scare and about communism and about like governmental control, like more than really anything else. Like it almost surplants the entire story about the bomb. And I feel like I felt that way far more the second time. Maybe because I had already seen everything about the science and the development of the weapon and the tests and all that. I knew how that was going to go, so I was focusing on something else. But um, it's really strange, and even the scene with Truman, like Truman is like monstrous in this,
I was
and
gonna say
it's
when we,
basically like two narcissists trying to say I did this, and Oppenheimer does it through projecting like pity and feeling, but you also feel like part of him wants is still like, no, this was me. But that's the question this movie asks, and I think one of the most interesting things this movie does is it shows literally one of the first things it shows you is him literally trying to kill someone because they slighted him. And because they like minorly inconvenienced his ability to go watch Niels Bohr speak, and they got in the way of his obsession with science, and that he was willing to kill someone over that, and it didn't happen, but that really happened, and like that is like sociopathic, right? Like he just in the moment was just like, this guy, I don't like this guy, I'm gonna do this. Like that's what it shows you he is. So I think as the movie progresses, you have to keep that understanding. But at the same time, I feel like his scientific ideas are almost presented like a curse. Like it's something that is always like these thoughts are playing in his mind, and Nolan uses all of that imagery of, the atom and this and that, like to show you like he's haunted by it. Like it's like a ghost that he can't shake. And it's gonna push him until he's able to create this thing that it seems like he almost was destined to create. Um, and I will say, I think the movie is fair in its assessment that the project was started because the Germans were working on this. And if you let Nazi Germany get this weapon, they would use it, right? And they would use it on whoever they felt was inferior, etc. So there was a just cause, I think, to begin the project. The thing is, by 1942, that project had fallen apart in Germany, um, mostly ironically because Hitler hated the Jews more than he wanted to have that project finished. And a lot of the scientists he needed, he didn't trust and he didn't want to use, and he hated them. And he wouldn't trust science. And he abandoned that and refused to put money into it. And that cost them in their research. And, you know, um, but at the same time, when we found out Germany's project was falling apart, and it's presented in the movie, the ship had already sailed. We had sunk $1 billion into this. They weren't going to stop. Like they weren't going to say, "Oh, we don't need this anymore." And the Russians also already knew that we were working on it. So you have to keep going at that point because the race has changed from Germany to Russia, or the Soviet Union. So I feel like it shows how he just completely loses. It's not in his control. He is just a cog, a very smart cog that's going to be used, and then as soon as it's ready, Matt Damon's so good in this movie. Like, it doesn't get talked about. He's brilliant in this. But as soon as it's ready and they're driving off in the trucks, you see how dismissive they are towards him, and it's done. That it's done, and they don't need him anymore. And that's when the guilt starts. And I think like it's very powerful. But I think he's very complex, and I think people wanted him to be good guy or bad guy, and they forget he was a person. I think that's interesting.
I have two things. I kind of want to go back to what you just said, Dan, about 1942. I think you said that Germany,
late 41, 42, yeah.
yeah, like had fizzled out. Was there like actually word that it had fizzled out?
We
Like
knew
that
what we knew what they were doing, and I think like people would paint it in a way that maybe we didn't know. But I think like we had spies, like there was a fairly open knowledge both ways about who had what, I think. So,
Okay.
but again, we spent $2 billion on this project in the 40s. Like that, it's an obscene amount of money. It wasn't going to stop. So
Yeah, it's an obscene amount of money now.
yeah,
My other thing too, I like the scene when Matt Damon first comes in and they're kind of like going back and forth. They're like, "What are you gonna do?" And he's like, "They're gonna make me a general for this." That's like the only thing that like kind of bothers me about like the whole army situation in this is he goes from colonel to a major general, so a 2-star general instead of a brigadier general, and like you just don't jump up the rank, like you just don't skip over a 1-star general to go be a major general. That was my like one gripe.
Well, maybe if you help the atomic bomb get made, they're like,
I mean, yeah, maybe there's exceptions. Maybe I
he
should.
could have been promoted multiple times, right? And I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure we can just look it up, but I
I
would
mean,
assume
yeah, but
that's
it
what
seems
happened.
like between when he has that meeting with Oppenheimer in the like classroom versus when they first get to, is it Los Alamos? I think is what they called it. Um, wasn't there only like a 2-year time span there?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, so like that's just like ridiculously fast to go from colonel to major general.
Yeah.
it's crazy. Just thinking about already the huge names that he's cast in the Odyssey. I don't know. Obviously, everyone that he cast in this is a good actor, and some are great actors. I don't think there's one person that is miscast. Honestly, do you guys think? I mean, there's like 25, big names in this. Is there anybody that you can think of that um, either they were miscast, or what is your favorite performance out of this insane group here? I would say one that obviously isn't like some of the big ones like Matt Damon or Emily Blunt or obviously Cillian Murphy.
I like Josh
Um,
Hartnett's character.
yeah,
It's a good one.
yeah. I like David Ismalchian's good. I think Casey Affleck is pretty scary in this.
Yeah.
Really good.
I was wondering how you were going to feel about him because aren't you not a huge Casey Affleck fan?
No, I'm not, but I think he's good in this, and I think what's his face? Rami Malek.
Yeah.
Like he has a small but pivotal part in terms of kind of turning the tide on Strauss. I think that's very satisfying, and um, I enjoyed that. I think it's such an interesting movie. I think the thing is, despite I mentioned that I feel like Oppenheimer probably had some like sociopathic tendencies and maybe was not in touch with humanity in the way that a lot of other people are, and just was thinking on another level where he probably didn't value human life. Um, and I think you can see that in the way he treated women in his life too. Like he was very just kind of did what he wanted and expected it to be fine. Um, the thing is, though, right after the bomb was dropped, I think he spent the rest of his life essentially advocating for control over nuclear weapons and fighting against the hydrogen bomb, which was, I don't think people understand how much more powerful a hydrogen bomb is.
Yeah.
Like with nuclear fusion, like it's like it's hotter than the surface of the sun. Like I don't it's like impossible to even comprehend that type of destruction, and that comes across when they say like this is fine till someone makes a bigger bomb. Like that's what the H bomb was, and he fought against that kind of tooth and nail. And I think that's when the government was like, okay, this guy's annoying. Like, how do we get rid of him? Like, how do we make you nobody? Um, and I think that story is important to be told. I don't know, but I think it's definitely ego and hubris driving a lot of him at the start of this because he's not thinking about any consequence. He's just thinking about scientific progress, probably for himself.
One actor wise, Josh Hartnett, just seeing him be great on screen was amazing. But one of the mentioning, the poisoning of the apple, which makes me think of the just kind of since this movie is about creation and destruction, it kind of made me think of the Bible, poisoning of the apple, coming from the snake, and once the apple was accepted and ate, death was released upon the world. And then, of course, just poison of the apple leading to, death being placed upon the world with the bomb being dropped. And the idea that, we could destroy the world with this one thing. Um, and just the whole modern day Prometheus talk, of, bringing fire just for the love of mankind, to make sure they can move forward in progress. And now this same fire is to destroy and end everything in the same way of Mr. Manhattan. Um, but it's a hell of a movie. Just from a technical standpoint, audio standpoint, seeing this in IMAX is just a visual and audio treat, especially if you're first time seeing it. And the week that they put it back out earlier last year, it was packed. It was like I saw people like 10 p.m. going to see Oppenheimer again. Um, but it's such a dense movie that I feel like a lot of people either dismiss because of the time or dismiss because the movie wasn't exactly what they thought it was going to be or what they wanted it to be.
Yeah. Do you think feeling a certain type of way about the use of the bomb is a good reason to dislike the movie?
No, because I don't think it gives you like a clear cut answer on like it. I think it would have been a lot worse if we saw the destruction. Like we do basically see the destruction, right? We see it through Oppenheimer's eyes. So I think it does give you a clear point of view on how you're supposed to feel about it. One thing that you've hinted at, Dan, that I think it would have been maybe too much to pack into the film was the necessity of it and what Japan was doing and the fact that they wouldn't stop. Um, Maybe that could have been highlighted more. But that's necessarily not what the movie's about. It's the fact that what the situations that, like you were saying, what Oppenheimer was put into, the funds that the government had put into it, and you still have an enemy out there. You still have Japan, because Germany had already surrendered, right? So that's when they
When the
thought they
bomb
weren't going to.
dropped.
Yeah, yeah. So that's when they thought they weren't going to use it at all. But obviously, even the government, I mean, it's a weapon. The government wants to know how a weapon will function. And like you said, you mentioned it two times. Well, you mentioned both of these things. The fact that obviously the government is, in our opinion, presented in a villainous way, but also you have Harry Truman, and he's very much like maniacal, and he's like Gary Oldman's great cameo, but he is a little evil goblin, like in his little chair, just talking to Oppenheimer. Um, and I think it does give us an opinion on how we're supposed to feel about it through Oppenheimer's eyes. Um, and that he had no other choice but to create destruction. In a way, he was forced to.
And I think it's also interesting to think about, like, World War II was not created in a vacuum. And when you look at Oppenheimer, everyone forgets Oppenheimer was born into a Jewish family. And no one talks about that. And I think when you understand that this was very personal to him, and not just as a Jewish man, but as a scientist, because the same scientists that he was in Germany studying with, those people were fleeing Germany, and a lot of Jewish scientists were fleeing Germany like 10 years before. Um, and not only was he using his money to support communists in Spain, which was just fighting, like it was a proxy war fighting against Italy and Germany and fighting against fascism, he was also using his money to pay essentially for Jewish scientists to be able to flee from Germany, and he was pouring money into that 10 years before the war. And I think it probably felt personal to him to an extent that he was making this weapon to beat the Germans. And I think that's something that can't be ignored. Despite his hubris and how he was as a person, I think he is a man who did care about things and did care about people, and he demonstrated that with his actions and with his money. So I don't know. I think it is complicated when you think about it from that angle. And you talked about it, Stone, but I think like nobody talks about what Japan killed like 20, 30 million people in the 20th century. Nobody talks about it. There are no movies about that. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, we have the. I mean, I guess I could say the title of the movie, the Rape of Nanking movie, which when they
Yeah.
went to Korea, and that's a hard movie to watch. And then, unfortunately, I can't remember what they call guinea pig movies. Of using their atrocities. It's like U-731. It's using.
Unit 731.
Yep,
Yeah.
unit, and there's a movie about that, but it's used as exploitation because it was done
Yeah.
in the 70s and not as a serious movie about the atrocities they were doing on human beings and especially Korea.
Yeah, and it was like I don't think like it was everywhere. Like it was everywhere in Asia, and the same ideology that the Nazis had in Germany is what Japan had. Like it was superiority, and they did it to the Chinese. They did it in the Philippines. They did it in Indonesia, Korea, and we talked about the movie I talked about the movie Exuma last year. Like that's what that movie is about. Like Japan's atrocities. And like you're talking about Unit 731. You're talking about like dissecting babies while they're alive to see what happens, and like freezing people in freezers and seeing how long they live, and injecting people with STDs and making them have sex and have baby, like things like that, where it's just like I struggle to find the empathy. Truly, I genuinely do, because when you do these things, I understand it's the government, but eventually who pays in war is your people, and that is war, and war is not pretty. Um, and this is an example of a lose-lose situation. If we had invaded Japan, that would have been the most horrific. That would have been the most horrific single event like of warfare in history. That would have been horrifying, and they would have used their civilians essentially as fodder to fight with whatever they had. And I'm glad that didn't happen. I probably wouldn't be here, as my grandfather was getting ready to invade Japan, and he probably would have been killed there. So, um, I think people in today's world don't like the fact that certain situations have no good answer. I think that bothers people, and they think everything has to be clean, and that doesn't actually get you anywhere in life. Like I think it's very like terminally online and just like doesn't actually provide any value. Looking at the world, I think we just saw it with the election too, where a lot of people didn't vote on one issue, and now you have someone who is the worst possible outcome on that issue and a million other issues. So good job, but you didn't accomplish anything except make things worse. And I find that really frustrating when people approach the world in that way.
I mean, Godzilla minus one. That was the once we get towards the end, it's like the government does not care about you. They
Yes.
were going to use you as fodder, and they didn't care. And like you thought you were doing this for nation, and then end up finding out that you were being used the whole time. Um, and I mean, I agree with you. It's the unfortunate thing of just not seeing the full picture of what's actually going on. Nobody, I mean, in Oppenheimer, like you can tell, like it is personal for him. Every time Germany is mentioned, he gets riled up. And even when they dropped the bomb, he even mutters, he was like, I just wish we had enough time so we could have dropped it on Germany.
Yeah.
Like that's that was his goal. Japan, I don't think Japan was even on his mind. It just shifted there.
Yeah.
And they were going to use it no matter what. They, like you said, they spend all this money. We got to show what we were doing the whole time. Um, but it was like if they could have got if I wonder what Oppenheimer's response or feel if the bomb dropped on Germany instead of Japan, and how what his outcome would have been if that was the case.
That's a very interesting question. Yeah. And I wonder, like you're talking about even his future in terms of being in opposition to weapons research moving forward.
Yeah,
Yeah. That is an interesting question.
because
Yeah, who
who
knows how
is
that even would have changed the world? I mean, you don't know. Um, but I think he was a big force in terms of trying to keep the Cold War cold. And I think the way McCarthyism is kind of shown in this movie is like they capture that like all-consuming nature of it, where it was so like just feverish how people were, and just going after people for anything and everything. And I wish we got more media about that, because you know I made a video the other day about how Roy Cohn, who brought Trump up, was McCarthy's lawyer. Like, we're seeing the same shit. Like, it's a direct lineage, uh, and it's just pervasive, nonstop, unrelenting hatred and aggression, and that is the legal strategy that we're seeing now. And it's just that's the lineage, and I think it's upsetting, but I think people need to remember that wasn't that long ago. Like, really. So
All right, what do you boys have this ranked at? Rated.
1.5.
Fives
I think I
across the
gave it
board.
like a 9 out of 4.5, 9 out of 9.5 if I had to give it like out of 10.
Connor?
5.
All
Yeah,
right.
5.
I think it's Nolan's second best.
So, Chris, you have Everything Everywhere All at Once as your favorite out of this lot, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. I mean, the performances weren't terrible, yeah. But
They
yeah,
weren't
what a
terrible.
list. All right, what would you rank these all real quick? So I'll go first. Just get through it. So Oppenheimer, Everything Everywhere, Nomadland, and Coda for me.
Parasite.
Oh, my bad. I forgot about that one. hold on. Damn, that's tough. That I
He was
forgot about
so ready.
Shit. Jeez, that's really tough. I hate to say it, but I would do. Shit, I might do. Damn, I might do.
Spit it out.
Oppenheimer. Sorry. I'm thinking it's tough. Oppenheimer, Parasite, Everything Everywhere, Nomadland, Coda. Damn, that hurts me, but
I think I'd go Oppenheimer, Parasite, Nomadland, Coda, everything.
uh, Everything, Parasite, Oppenheimer, Coda, Nomadland.
For me, I would say Oppenheimer, and then Parasite, and then Coda, and then Nomadland, and then Everything Everywhere. But I like these a lot, obviously, and like you said, one of the better batches of movies we've done.
Yeah, this is one of our best lineups.
Yeah.
that's why we talked about it for 3 hours. Chris, you got a movie that you would recommend people check out? We always do this at the end of the episode. Something that's new that you think needs some attention, or you already mentioned some movies already, but or something that's a personal favorite of yours from the past. Doesn't matter what.
Something. Well, Mexican film, 2017, but I don't think it came to the States till 2019. It's called Tigers Are Not Afraid. About Mexican orphans trying to live. Think Emily Perez, but a lot better. With the talk of using a cartel and the disappearance of family members and the fallout of what happens with kids and the trauma and how kids respond using their imaginations. So if you get a chance to see Tigers Are Not Afraid, please do so. And also Spike Lee's Bamboozled. I think that's a movie that he made that doesn't get talked about a lot when it comes to the use of black imagery, especially when it's corporatized by big entities and how they see black folks on the screen, and how they are used and how it could teeter between being powerful but also being hurtful to African Americans as far as image and how they're stereotyped in the world.
Nice.
Dan, you got one picked out yet?
You can go, Stone.
Okay, mine's gonna be a very different tonally, but personal favorite of mine that I used to watch when I was a kid that I revisited, and I'm gonna maybe make a video about it because I've wanted to, because I think it's the only animated film that can be considered one of the greatest sports films of all time, possibly in the sport it's talking about, and that Surfs Up, because when it comes to like surfing movies, and I read a bunch of articles about this. There really is a tough time of really filming what it feels like to be in a wave, to be honest. They don't get it per se really well because there has to be so many cuts because it is a moving body of water, whereas in Surf's Up can like take images from surfers' expertise and like actually put it to screen. So I think animation really helps when it comes to this sport of surfing. But also the fact that more than basketball, football, soccer, any of these other sports, it's like a one person thing, and you don't necessarily need to compete or anything. It's like your own individual experience with the activity itself, which I think is really unique to the sport. And it's a sense of community, and that's really what the movie is about. Like there's a tournament that goes on, but that's not the end goal. The end goal is just to love surfing and love the reason why you do it. But yeah, so I think it's really good. Don't love that Shia LaBeouf is Cody, but that's all right. You got Jeff Bridges, Zoe Deschanel, but it's really good. I like it's also mockumentary style, which I think really helps it just be memorable. I like the mockumentary style. Also, a lot of good mid 2000s like soft rock music in it, which it was some good throwbacks there.
Nice. I watched a. If you want to watch a western, I watched a movie called Ombre. It was a Paul Newman movie he made with Martin Ritt, and it's streaming on Prime Video. It is kind of strange. Essentially, Paul Newman is this white dude that was basically abandoned by his parents and raised by Apaches. Um, and then essentially has to kind of like reintegrate into the world. And it very much deals with the way, like, it deals with discrimination through how his character is treated, but also you see discrimination against like the other Apaches in the film. But basically, it's kind of about his view towards the world. He ends up on a stagecoach with all these like random white people that all kind of have different dynamics, and basically just is kind of disgusted by everyone. And it was kind of ahead of its times and one of those westerns that like was willing to deal with racism and like how indigenous people were treated, which it's from 67. So I mean, you're getting a lot of like questionable stuff from that era, but like I thought it was pretty good and kind of a slow burn that, but Paul Newman was just fantastic. And it's a good movie and it's streaming, so you can watch it on Amazon.
Nice. Well, Chris, you made it for your through your first Goodwill podcasting, the longest one. You might not come back after this. I knew it would be a long conversation just because these movies are good. Usually when they're like shitty, we're talking about like I don't know, no offense, but Fast and Furious like 8, whatever it's called, the Fate and the Furious. Not a whole lot to talk
Not
about when
much
it
to
comes to
dig
that.
into, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, thanks for joining us. Please tell everyone where they can check you out. Hopefully they loved you on our pod and they want to see more of you. So tell them where they can find you.
I go by the name of Physics. That's PHZ dash SICKS. You Google that, I'll be the only thing that pops up. As far as TikTok and all my socials, is PHZ underscore SICKS. If you love hip hop and you love good music on every streaming platform, my last album and last few singles, because I do hip hop, I do rap. You love good music. Check out my last album, The Moment, and certain songs I've done, like Daniel Robitaille. If you're in a spooky Halloween type feel, that is inspired by Giallo and more than anything, Tony Todd's Candyman.
Nice.
Nice. That was a great plug.
The best plug we've ever had.
Yeah, for real.
Oh, I've done this for years.
Yeah. Well,
Because it's interesting tonight that one of my peers, because I started rapping during the block era, and that was during the time period of Drake. I've opened up for J. Cole, I've opened up for Wale, and it's interesting tonight that somebody during that time period it's going to be headlining the Super Bowl. So,
Yeah.
it's beautiful to see.
big SZA fan too. I love SZA a
Yeah.
lot. I got one of her records back here, so yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, guys, again, Physics, thanks so much for being here with us. Tune in next week. I believe we're going to talk about all the Captain America movies. Looking forward to Captain America: Brave New World. Hopefully, it's good. I
Yep.
really hope so. I'm worried, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, until then, please go check out Physics wherever he just said. But until then, guys, thanks for joining Go Well Podcasting. Please, this week, go outside, sit on a park bench, touch some grass, call your friends. We'll see you then. Peace.